meeting, especially beginning of the year. I think, Linda, it's our first meeting this year.
Yes, Chair.
Hope everything is well to everyone, understanding that there were those that left us due to floods that are on our provinces, and also happy that the president has declared the disaster, national disaster. I saw from the TV right now that there will disruptive rains around Limpopo, around Gauteng area. So we pray for them and we hope they will overcome. This thing of climate change has just come us and we don't know on how to curb it, but we will still stay with it until things goes right. I wish to welcome everybody and wish to say happy belated Valentine and happy belated birthday to me, and happy birthday and belated to my Honorable Kate. And I also wish to welcome and say happy birthday to come to those that are still waiting for their birthdays. Understanding at least that this is really a loving month. So we should really love one another, love our families, love everyone around us, even the neighbors. Even the Bible says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. So I just want to open with those few words today. I'm not going to dwell too much because we have to catch the bus at 12. So hoping that by that time we'll be done with our meeting. But we're not going to leave no stone unturned. It's just that we have to make things according to times. Let's request Lindy to flight the agenda. So before everything happens, we agree on the agenda that we're going to follow. Thank you very much, Lindy. We have done part 1 of the agenda. We are on the introduction of MPs, support staff, and also the department. Who is present, who's not present? Will you please assist us, Lindy? Those that are able to flight their cameras can do so, but those that are unable to do it, we will understand because of the load shedding. Sometimes others are unable to show their face when they are being introduced. And just to see one another for the beginning of the year, especially because it's our first meeting. We want to see everyone that is she still in the face and the shape that we know, or Sibona robot. Thank you ever so much. Over to you, Lind.
Chairperson.
Chairperson, we are not the robot.
You might not know technology is advanced now. And we were born before technology, so we can't be sure. Okay, Lindy, can you tell us who's in the meeting?
Thank you very much, Chair. I also wish to greet everyone in this meeting, in our first meeting of 2023, Chair. We have you as the chairperson of this committee, and I think everyone saw your face. Can I take out the agenda so that when people are switching off their cameras, they can be visible?
Okay.
When members, okay. We have Member Stock as the whip of the majority party, who's also present in this meeting. Mr. Stock. I think maybe she is got a problem.
Okay.
Morning, honorable members. I mean, load shedding. Please forgive me.
Okay.
We
Thanks,
also
Lindy.
okay, we have our veteran member Manganye, who's also present in our first meeting. Member Manganye, can you see your face, please?
No face. Around.
Are you not a robot?
Not.
Okay, member. We proceed to member Bilangulu, who's also present with us in today's meeting.
Let's see your face, Stamate. No face. Can we proceed? Thank you, Lindy.
Up there. We have member Abrahams.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, colleagues, and good morning to everybody.
Clanky, let's see you, Clanky. Thank you. Thanks.
We have member Hlongo.
Oh, Shongo is the Clanky.
Yes, Chair, I am here, but I can't open my video for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Clanky. Alex is holding now. Thanks.
We have member Iris.
Where are you, Lindy?
Chair, if you maybe can close your video so that member Iris can be visible here. She's right there at the corner. May I proceed, Chair? We have member Mare, who's also present.
Thank you. Thank you. We can see.
I think, Chair,
Proceed, Lindy.
those are the members that are in the meeting thus far. I've received also 2 apologies from members. May I record them?
Please.
Okay, Chair. Firstly, Chair, I wish to confirm that there are 8 members out of 11, and I wish to confirm that we are a quorum and we can take decisions in this meeting. Chair, I have 2 apologies. It's from member Masango, who is committed due to party commitments. She won't be with us today. Also, member Van der Merwe, she has a doctor's appointment. She will join the meeting at 10:30. Those are the 2 apologies, Chair. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Lindy. Can we hand over to DG from the department side? Oh, welcome, Minister. Is DM present so that I can also acknowledge and welcome Lindy? Is DM present?
I didn't see her, Chair, in the participants list.
Welcome, welcome, Minister.
Good morning, Chairperson. I am here. Thank you very much.
We can see you. You are not a robot. Are the officials present, the ones that are relevant today, Minister?
Yes, they are, Chairperson. They are. I'd like to request that they introduce themselves very quickly, because time is of essence also.
Okay, thank you. Over to them.
Thank you.
Linton, what's up to you? You are moving up and down, but we can see your face. You are not a robot.
Apologies.
Welcome.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. It's good to see you. Welcome to all, sorry, good morning to all members of the portfolio committee, and I hope it's not too late to say compliments of the new year to everybody. We are here as the department, and I think that we are here both in terms of our agency, SASSA, as well as the department, the chairperson. And so maybe the CEO can indicate from her side in terms of the people who are here.
You are breaking. Your network
Our
is
side,
not.
the team that is responsible for the agenda item is represented in the meeting. Thank you very much, Chair. Oh, okay. No, it's okay, Chairperson. First part for about an hour, so we're presenting the cluster this morning, so we'll just be in and out for the first hour. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Linton. The CEO.
Good morning, Chairperson. The CEO is currently on leave. My name is Kasera. I'm the acting CEO currently. And I'm here with all the committee. We've also requested the presence of the post in addressing some of the issues that the committee have requested. So, introduce the team, but first, I would like to ask the members of SASSA just to put their cameras on so that they can seem to be present. As for members,
Okay.
we have rented
Thank you.
the discussion and as members will show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We can see them, that they are present, they are not robots. Thanks for that, and you are all welcome in the meeting. Then, according to
the CEO of the Post Bank to also greet members.
Who's that?
The CEO of the bank.
Here.
CEO, kindly introduce yourself and your team.
The network is not so good. I think it is enough when the CEO is introducing himself or herself, and then we can pass. If you have said you are all here, it is enough for us. Thank you very much. Let's proceed. Lindy has already forwarded them. Lindy has put the apologies, and I assume and take for granted that we have accepted them because they are in order. And then the agenda that's there. Can we agree with the agenda with the inclusion of the minister's political overview? Can we agree with the agenda? Any hand?
No hand, I agree, Chair.
Honorable Makanyi, thank you very much, has adopted the agenda. Any second?
Seconded, Chair.
Is that Honorable Kate?
Yes, Chairperson.
Yes. Honorable Bilangulu has seconded the adoption of the agenda with the inclusion of the minister's political overview. Then, if it is like that, let's go straight to the minister for her overview. Thank you over so much. Minister, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. As usual, it's always a pleasure for us to be here to continue to account to the Portfolio Committee, as we very much are aware that the Portfolio Committee members here represent their constituencies, and their constituencies always want answers. We are always appreciative, obviously, of the oversight work that the Portfolio Committee does overall, and we Hope that as this is the beginning of the year, Happy New Year to everyone, even though it's the second month already. But we're ending the year 2022-2023, and we'll soon be entering the year 2023-2024 financial year. And we are at the moment in a space where we are discussing the State of the Nation address and the debates that are happening in the House. Hopefully those are adding a lot of value to the work that we do, because I personally believe that the work of the Department of Social Development, being that of being responsible for the well-being of South Africans, everyone else who speaks in Parliament from an executive point of view and from parliamentarians' point of view, enhances the work that we do as a Department of Social Development. So this morning, you said it's a loving month. I'll try and spread as much love as possible. And thank you very much, Honorable Chair and members of the Portfolio Committee on Social Development, for the opportunity to give this briefing, this political briefing. And of course, the department, as well as the Post Bank and overall, and SASSA in particular, will be making the presentation. I think the apology has been made already by the DG of the other meeting that he has to attend. I'm very much aware of that. And myself, I am here, but I have to go to cabinet meeting. I thought, let me start here and then go to the cabinet meeting. So when you don't see me, Chair, it's not because I am and not here for any other reason other than the fact that I will be in cabinet, but also the DM is here to be able to support the presentations that are being made where the support is necessary. The status of the payment of social grants, and I'm happy that Chairperson, this meeting is taking place, because I do believe that in the work that we do, we need to find a way of coming to a center where we can all be able to engage and see what solutions do we get. But also as a national department, I want to make it clear to this meeting also, Chairperson, that SASSA and firstly, the DSD has got provincial departments and MECs at provincial level. SASSA has also got the regional managers who are supposed to respond to the immediate challenges and immediate needs of our people. And I say this, Chairperson, because sometimes I get a sense that it is the national department that gets under pressure to deal with even issues which are really, really supposed to be dealt with at a provincial level. I'm hoping that this, because when I engage with the MECs of most provinces, they always step up to whatever I'm calling them upon, whether it's queues and how those queues can be managed, whether it's trying to bring chairs for people, whether it's trying to take care at people who are not in a good state to be standing in queues. That is a responsibility of the regional managers, and that is the responsibility of also of the MECs and the Department of Social Development to step up and be of assistance at all times. So the status of the payment of social grants under SASSA, SAPO and Post Bank Cooperation Agreement that was signed in 2017 and came to effect in 2018. These are the issues that both SASSA and DSD are going to be dealing with. Secondly, the transition from SASSA SAPO Cooperation Agreement to SASSA Post Bank. Thirdly, the status report on the payment of COVID-19 Social Relief of Distress grant. And fourthly, the status report on the Independent Tribunal for Assistance Appeals. Honorable Chair, before I deliver my brief remarks and hand over to the department and SASSA, as well as the Post Bank who are here to render the presentation, please allow me to express my gratitude to you and the honorable members of the committee for your unrelenting support, guidance, and cooperation at all times. Over the last couple of years, we deepened the constructive engagements with the Portfolio Committee, frankly, and for the benefit of all South Africans. There's no reason we should not continue working together in 2023 as we have done since the beginning. I submit that it is up to all of us to make the work of the committee responsive to the lived experiences of the people, because we all want the same thing for our constituencies, namely to deliver the best possible services and support to the most vulnerable across South Africa. And when we talk about the most vulnerable, we focus on them, but that doesn't mean we also don't focus on other people as a Department of Social Development. And this is a common goal that, regardless of our political differences, we agree upon. Consequently, I invite us to work together towards its meaningful realization. And when we talk about working together, Honorable Chairperson and members, it's not for us to run away from the responsibilities of government and those of us who are ministers and the department from accounting. But this nation can never be built by government alone. It's us pulling our heads together and holding hands together and making sure that South Africa becomes a better place, not only for ourselves, but in the main for the people of South Africa. And so as we begin 2023 parliamentary program, we remain committed to and every measure of cooperation and support that is necessary and possible towards ensuring that we are responsive to the lived experience of the people in these trying times. Chair, I must highlight that
recording in progress.
That one of the key principles that informed the SASSA Post-Bank Cooperation Agreement was that there must be a seamless transition from SAPO without interruption in the payment of social grants. I mean it unequivocally that when I say the payment of social grant is more than just an administrative function, it is a constitutional obligation that we do not make light of, because we fully appreciate the fact that social grants are the lifeline for millions of South Africans. Over the festive season onwards to a few days ago, I received countless frantic calls and messages from social grant beneficiaries from different communities and across the country. And I don't think that I'm the only one who receives this. I'm sure the members in their constituencies do so. I'm sure the MECs and REMs at provincial level also get the same. Common to their calls was the complaint that they cannot access their grant money due to connectivity issues and malicious cyber attacks. While these challenges have since been resolved, some of them, I formally raised my concern with the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies. We have since set up a task team comprising of the Department of Social Development, the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies, SASSA and SAPO and Postbank. And I know some members might say task teams. Yes, it's going to be task teams, because if we want to be focused on this, we need to pull everybody into one room and be able to share, especially in our situation room, what the challenges are and how we're going to be able to deal with that. The task team recommended the session of the SASSA SAPO Master Service Agreement and assignment of the contract from SAPO to the Post Bank. This recommendation was endorsed in a meeting with the Deputy Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies and came to effect on the 1st of October 2022. During the presentation, the representatives of Postbank will provide an update on this matter and outline measures that are being carried out to address systems vulnerabilities and failures that were being experienced during the transition from SAPO to Postbank. At the end of January, SASSA received over 13.5 million applications for the COVID-19 SRD, which is popularly known as the 350. Of this number, between 7.4 million and 7.8 million clients are approved every month. All our assessments and payments are up to date and running smoothly from 1 month to the next. As far as payments is concerned, about 95% of approved applicants were paid for the early months. Subsequently, this coverage dropped to about 90% in August 2022. We experienced a further drop to 85% in the more recent month. The presentation will provide a more detailed analysis on this matter. The presentation will also provide an update on the work of the Independent Tribunal the Independent Tribunal for Social Assistance Appeals with regard to the COVID SRD. Of importance for the committee to note are the measures we have put in place to improve the appeals process turnaround time. And this, for honorable members, I must say it has been one of those pains for me, because sometimes government moves too slowly to ensure that the tribunal members themselves are in place and up and running. Honorable Chair, as I conclude, I'd like to apologize for my early departure from this meeting to a cabinet meeting that is currently underway at 10 days. With your permission, please allow me to now hand over to the Acting Director General and SASSA Acting CEO, from them, as well as the Post Bank, for them to render today's presentation. And of course, we will see you in the House in the afternoon, as I'm one of the people who are debating today. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Minister, with the political overview that is putting light to us. And also, we wish you all the best for debating today. And you are excused as much as you want the time. It's up to you. When you want to be released, you can just leave the meeting. We'll continue with the meeting. Thanks ever so much.
Thank you.
Then can I give over to the department to brief us?
Thank you very much, Chair.
Yes.
And is it okay if we proceed?
Proceed, Acting.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I think the Minister has really summed up the contextual, I suppose, overview and laid the platform for the presentation. So I'm not going to waste time. I'm simply going to ask my colleagues from SASSA to put the presentation up. And once the presentation has been made, I will check if Maureen has any additional inputs to make, and then we'll conclude on that note. So I'm going to ask SASSA to put the presentation up and get started with the presentation. Raphael, I think you're going to kick us off there.
Thanks.
Who must I make a co-host?
Brenton, please, Lindy.
Okay, thanks.
Good morning, Honorable Chairperson, Minister, Deputy Minister, members, Honorable members. My name is Brenton van Friede. I'm the Executive Manager for Grants Administration at SASSA. Let me see. Okay, I can share now. So maybe just as a way of a quick background, we've got an invite today to present to the body committee, and a number of issues was raised that we hope that we'll be able to cover adequately in the presentation and be able to engage in a discussion afterwards. So we were asked to look at the SAPO's, the service level agreement between SASSA and SAPO. The reasons for the recent system failures that resulted in some beneficiaries not being able to withdraw their money from their bank accounts, and what was done to resolve this. We were also asked to speak about the transition from SAPO to Postbank, and what the terms of the service level agreement, if that exists, the communication strategy around that, and what the current status of payment of social grants is with the Postbank. We were then also asked to look at the different payment options available to beneficiaries. And then slightly different, sorry, let me go back. We were then also asked to just give an update on the SRD grant, both to existing and new applicants, as well as appeals. So members, this presentation does cover quite a extensive, it covers basically almost 3 or 4 entities that are all involved in this process. That's obviously the main or the lead entity. So SASSA will be covering the first part of the presentation that looks at the service level agreements. Then we've also asked Postbank to come in, and I believe the CEO is here with his team, and they're going to cover the issues that relates to Postbank. Then we will come back and do the SRD part, which relates to SASSA. and then the appeals tribunal, which is an independent organization as well, will come in and talk to challenges around appeals and where they are currently with appeals. So the presentation is almost going to be done two parts SASSA and one part Postbank, one part appeals tribunal. So just in terms of the first question around the service level agreement between SAPO and SASSA, it's quite an extensive service level agreement, but we thought we would just highlight some of the key points that most members would be interested, and that's around some of the service standards that we set for the service level agreement, and some of the actions we often take when these service standards aren't met. So, for example, at cash points and at SAPO branches, we have a requirement in the agreement that there needs to be seating for a minimum of 100 people. So this includes 30 chairs, both at the SAPO branches as well as cash pay points, to be able to seat at least 100 people. And then at cash pay points, there also needs to be ablution facilities for males, females, and people with disabilities. There also needs to be a supply of fresh drinking water in a dignified manner, which could either be through the provision of water in bottles or via water coolers and paper cups. There also needs to be a OHSA approved medical kit on site at each pay point, as well as one dedicated wheelchair at each site. And there also needs to be adequate shelter during payment times. These are monitored on a monthly basis, and where SAPO doesn't deliver, we impose a 5% penalty fee on the total invoice for that month. There's also a requirement that adequate equipment that complies with the SASSA norms and standards is outlined in the SAPO 5-year infrastructure plan. So when we entered into this agreement in 2018 with SAPO, we acknowledged that they might not have all the infrastructure immediately available. So in the beginning, we were very lenient while we allowed them to acquire the necessary infrastructure over time. And then, but now they are expected to have all of that in place. So some of the key items that we do expect there are cash dispensing machines, money counting machines, and adequate staff. And we do then monitor that as well. And we also, there should not also be a downtime that exceeds 1 hour. And again, the penalty on that is 5% of their monthly invoice if they don't comply with that requirement. Then we also have a requirement that they have alternative power on site in the event that there's a power failure. And that is in relation to that 1 hour requirement that they're not allowed to be down for more than an hour. And if they are down for more than an hour, there's also a requirement that they provide sandwiches and fresh and drinking beverages to clients while being down. In terms of security, we have a requirement that there is at least 4 armed registered security officers at cash pay points, and that there's a certificate of competence and a SAPS firearm competency certificate available at each point, and it is also available for inspection, and that there must be access control to these points, but also in a dignified manner. Here, the penalty is 1,500 rands per payment team or per infringement that occurs. So, members, just to give you a sense of how SAPO was delivering over the beginning part of this financial year for the part of the contract that they've held, noting that this contract was then ceded to Postbank in October 2022. And as you can see, for the period April to September, Postbank was not able to deliver on quite a large part. Not Postbank's, SAPO was not able to deliver on a large part of the contract, and was penalized. That 5% of the total invoice penalty was imposed upon them for all the months from April to September. And the main reasons for this penalty being activated was largely around the supply of dignity services. In many of the pay points, they still don't have adequate equipment to comply with the norms and standards. A lot of the times cash is still being counted and dispensed by hand. And in many instances as well, they've not adhered to the payment schedule or kept to the times of the payment schedule. We also thought it would be useful to give the members a sense of what it costs to deliver payments through these different channels. So we have 3 different payments. Our fee structure with SAPO was broken up into 3 payment categories. One is the national payment system. This is basically all beneficiaries have a bank account that we open, and they can then transact anywhere, at any ATM, at any merchant, at any point of sale, pretty much like the rest of us would just use our bank accounts. They are able to use their bank. We use their bank accounts and transact, and we pay SAPO 7 rands for that. If a beneficiary ever withdraws at the branch, it costs just under 73 rands, and if they draw at the cash pay point, it costs 188 rands. So very expensive. It's a very expensive. Cash pay points and branches are very expensive transactions when beneficiaries use these channels. Then the other question that was asked by the members is that what options are available to social grant beneficiaries, and I thought it would be useful then just to provide an extract from our legislation that provides 2 options essentially. The first option is with the regulation 23(1)A that enables a beneficiary to get their grant paid into their own bank account, or if they are in an institution, for example, an old age home or so forth, they can have the grant paid into the bank account of that institution. Very few people use that option though. The vast majority of our clients use the option to have the grant paid into their own bank account. And that is probably one of the safest options available as well, because it gives them full control to manage the payment. Then we also have 23B, which enables SASSA to provide a payment mechanism for those that do not have or do not want to use their own bank accounts. And the payment method then that was determined by SASSA, if honorable members would remember that in the past we used to outsource this to a private company, but since 2018 we then contracted SAPO to do this for us. And that contract essentially involves two things. The one is if as I mentioned, if the client does not want to use their own bank account or don't have a bank account, through the SAPO contract, we then open bank accounts for these clients. So it's still private, it's still bank accounts, like normal, ordinary bank accounts that are open for the clients with the Postbank. Those clients can then use those bank accounts in the same way as any other bank account. They can purchase goods on their card. They don't have to use the cash, but we do see that many of our beneficiaries still prefer to withdraw cash. They can withdraw cash at any point in the national payment system. So in other words, any ATM or any retailer that provides cashback services, or they can just swipe at any retailer that has a point of sale device. So that is the predominant access points for probably 98% of our clients, is through ATMs, retailers, points of sale, and so forth. And then we have a small group of clients, and I'll show the numbers now, that can withdraw their money from SAPO branches. This is becoming increasingly more challenging over time, as we probably all aware of the challenges with the post office. Many of their branches are closing. And then we also, in very rural areas where there isn't much infrastructure, we also provide mobile cash pay points. Just to give members a glance of how beneficiaries execute this right. This is just the different banks that beneficiaries have chosen to use. So and this includes both our SRD and our normal grants. You'll note that Postbank has the largest amount of clients, largely through the contract we have with SAPO, which has now been ceded to Postbank, which is about 8.3 million clients total. Of which the normal grants are about 6.2 million, and the SRD is just over 2 million. They also have some, in terms of not just the grants, but they're in Mzansi clients. And then you'll see from our SAPO branches, only about 120,000 in the last month have withdrawn cash from the SAPO branches, and about 140,000 from the cash break fund. So together, this is about 1.5% of our clients that still use these channels. And as I've showed earlier on, these are extremely expensive channels, and also extremely dangerous and risky, because it involves the movement of quite a lot of cash in various areas. Just to maybe point out, I think Capitec Bank is probably the bank that has been growing the fastest in terms of attracting clients or clients that are on social grants. And they're the second largest bank in that sense, with 26% of our clients. And then the sort of big four, ABSA, Nedbank, FNB, Standard Bank, all have about 4% each. And I think Time Bank is also a niche bank that is sort of caught up with them as well, with about 4% of our clients. And then the rest of the banks having smaller amounts as well, with clients choosing them as well. So just in terms of the, just in terms of the contract that was ceded to Postbank, this contract was ceded in October last year. It was basically, when it was ceded as is. So the entire service level agreement and the elements of the service level agreement that I've gone through a bit of it in the beginning of the presentation was ceded as is to the Postbank. So no changes were made. However, there is a clause in the ceding agreement that enables both parties to negotiate any changes, and we have set up a team that between the two organizations, including the departments, as ministers mentioned, that is also looking at reviewing the terms of the master service level agreement, and we hope to wrap that up by the 31st of March this year and implement in 1 April. So at this stage, to answer the one question, is there a new MSA? We don't have a new MSA at the moment. The existing MSA remains intact and needs to be implemented as is, but we should have a new MSA by the beginning of the financial year. And obviously, if the parties don't agree on the changes to the terms and conditions, then we would probably continue with the existing one until such time that we reach agreement or alternatives are put in place. I'm going to, at this point, hand over to the Postbank to take us through some of the challenges that they've experienced since taking over from SAPO.
Thanks, Brenton, and good morning to the chairperson, honorable members of the committee, honorable DM, and then colleagues from both DSD and SASSA. With me is Neo Moja, who will take us through the presentation, and then I will come in when we do the Q&A. Thanks. Neo, over to you.
Thank you, CE. Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, Honorable Minister, Honorable Deputy Minister, Honorable Members of Parliament, DG, CEOs, and colleagues.
We can't see your face, excuse me. Can we first see your face? Yes, it's very critical for us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Morning. Thank you, Chair.
Morning. Then you can maybe switch off.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, the Minister has touched on a number of these items, so I'll probably skip some of them. Also, my colleague Brenton has also touched on them. But as a background, Chairperson, Postbank, we all know it from the olden days with that small book, Bukana, to where it evolved to be a transactional bank, a saving bank. We are in the process of finalizing a few items, amending our act to ensure that we can apply for a banking license. So we are not necessarily new to the SASSA engagement, because when Post Office got the contract to run with this activity, it was because they had Post Bank as a division within the group. And in 2018, when we started this initiative, we were managing all those systems. We put together all of those systems. 2019, then it was gazetted to be a separate entity with its own board and everything. So we became separated, but we were still providing a service to SAPO as the main contractor. And mainly we were focusing on the ATMs and POS transactions at the retailers. So even though for CPPs and branches, the system that was being utilized is still the one that was being managed by SAPO, by Post Bank, apologies. And it's just that those activities were overseen by SAPO. Fast forward 2022 June, then a ministerial decision ensured that the three entities, together with our reporting departments, DCDT and DSD, formulated a team that looked out over the project to ensure that there's smooth transition. The project itself, Chairperson and honorable members, there were no material changes because the system has always been there, been maintained by Post Bank. The branches are still being run by SAPO and utilizing the same system. The CPPs are still being manned by SAPO officials on behalf of Post Bank now as the main contractor. So that then culminated in us having a working arrangement with SAPO. We are still in the process of trying to finalize the service level agreements. So we had to take over some of the contracts that they had entered into to fulfill this mandate. And then we also had to enter into new ones as part of that. So since the 1st of October, we then became a full party to the contract, and the reporting will also just be limited from October, because anything prior to that would be misleading the committee. And if I can request you go to next slide, Brenton. Thank you. As indicated in your presentation, no, the next one. Yes, the SLA that's in existence, is the one that we are utilizing. We've not entered into a new one, and so it remains there. We are still negotiating, as Brenton indicated. The next meeting is scheduled for the 27th as well. If we go to the cracks, yeah, thanks. On the system failures, Chairperson and honorable members, Post Bank, in terms of the Act, leverages of the infrastructure of South African Post Bank. So the Act somehow prohibits us from reinventing the wheel, creating a new branch, creating our own new infrastructure and all of those things. But that has proven to be a challenge, because we know the state within which our parent company is under. And so there's not been a lot of investment in some of the IT infrastructure and the general infrastructure properly. So which makes it difficult for us, because we are utilizing and leveraging of some of those infrastructure, and we also pay for those services. So since we took over, Chairperson, we started experiencing a few challenges when it comes to connectivity. And in parallel, Post Bank is implementing a project where we are modernizing our infrastructure. So we are going to have our new home data center, new data center that's compliant with the banking industry, because that's one of the conditions that the Reserve Bank also says we need to move from. So in parallel, whilst we were implementing those, we started experiencing a whole lot of failures in the current infrastructure that we are housed in, leading to some of the transactions being failed at the ATMs and POS. We have since resolved those latencies in terms of connectivity. And in the first month, I think the issue was also compounded by the fact that there was a decision to then stop the processing of grants through the biometric. Most of our customers or beneficiaries utilize their biometric identification as opposed to PIN, especially at the branches and also at CPPs. So when that was stopped at the branches, at CPPs, it was not an issue because we are operating in our own network. We don't touch the SASSA infrastructure. So then we experienced a few issues there. We then had to have a high-level engagement at the CEO's level to ensure that the decision is then reversed. It was then reversed, and then we went back to normal. And then in December, Chairperson, we started experiencing heightened and serious cyber attack to a point where we then had to inform the industry, engage with our partners in order to secure the national payment of the country, to stop temporarily the transactions at the ATMs, to focus on this malicious activity that has been happening now. We then had to rope in an additional capacity in terms of cybercrime experts, and also sanctioned through board a forensic investigation to ensure that we clean up the process, because it looked like it was coming from all angles. So that then, in the process of stopping the transactions that our beneficiaries were transacting, so transactions had to be halted halfway through, so reversals needed to be done, and in some instances, auto reversals kicked in, and in others, they did not kick in, so we had to intervene manually. So the customers were inconvenienced because at that point in time, when the transaction fails, then they try to use another channel. When they get to the next channel, they discover that no, all my money is gone. But in the background, we were working to reinstate those. So we've since reinstated those, Chairperson. And there was also another power failure at the data center where we are housed by SAPO. The generators are in a perilous state. We had to even bring in an external generator, and it's sitting there at our cost to ensure that at least we can power, to ensure that everything is in order. But in parallel, as indicated, Chairperson, we then had to swiftly move all our applications out of there. So we are just now dependent on the network coming from the branches, because that's their network and it goes to their data center before it branches out to us. So there is a process to ensure that we also move away from that dependency, because we've seen that that's where most of our pain and inconvenience to the beneficiaries is coming from. And as indicated, we've started migrating all of these applications out of that environment to ensure that our customers can at least we can reduce the level of pain, anxiety, and inconvenience. Thanks. If we go to the next slide. Thanks, Chairperson. SLA, we've touched on it. I'll touch on the communication. Yes, Chairperson, communication, I think it was one area that I think we need to improve on. We started a bit late because all the focus was on this the 3 months transition, putting all the resources together, running around to see what's happening in the CPPs, in the branches, to ensure if there's any innovation and ease of improving processes that can be factored into that. I think communication took a back seat, but they gradually started coming in as a stream. So we were working together with SASSA and under their guidance to ensure that there's campaigns on TV, interviews, and radio, community radio, most especially, to ensure and assure the beneficiaries that although, because now they are seeing different T-shirts now, and although we are moving over, everything remains the same. Because if one looks at that card at the back, there is the logo of Postbank, but people normally overlook that. So so they needed some assurance. The campaign ensured that at least we inform our beneficiaries that their card will still be active. They can still utilize it anywhere. So the fact that there's a changeover, they shouldn't worry a lot. Beneficiaries were also advised at the branches as they come in for their payments and CPPs. And there's been a stakeholder engagement in certain instances, obviously through the guidance of SASSA and engagement with tribal authorities and interested parties. The main challenges has been, apart from the cyber, at the inception, it was, I think, that decision where a unilateral decision was taken to just hold the processing of normal grant through the branches, but that decision has since been reversed. It inconvenienced although CPPs and OTC, the branch transactions, account to 6%, but I mean it's a sizable number, and at the branch is 200 and something. So if they are inconvenienced, any inconvenience is significant. So we've started migrating. We've migrated our applications. We've got new architecture now where applications are sitting differently from databases. Authentication is sitting elsewhere to ensure that we can nip this thing of cyber and probably sabotage before it even gives us a headache. The other challenge was just the misinformation. Obviously, because we were not on the ground, it was easy for the competitors to then start luring all our customers away, and the challenges also didn't do us justice. Thanks, Chair. If we go to the next slide. Thanks, Chairperson. We want to assure the honorable members that the effort that we've taken to ensure that we stabilize the environment is bearing fruit. We've seen in January, there's not been a lot of inconvenience, and we are ensuring that we can keep up the momentum, even improve to a point where customers shouldn't even know that there is a bank. They should just forget about Postbank and start transacting. So most of us here that have got bank cards, we don't even remember going to a branch or calling or anything of that sort. So that's where we are heading. The infrastructure challenges, we've resolved those. We've moved away. It's the network component at the branch transactions that we have to see how we move away from that. But CPPs, they're out, so they're running away from the SAPO infrastructure. The NPS and ATMs, those have always been away. So we've hardened the security. Now it's difficult. We know who is paying which grant where and what time. The methods that are still available, Brenton touched on them. Those are the normal payment methods. It's either they go to the CPPs, which is the least number of people there. However, this is the most expensive because now you transport the cash, you take away from your savings in order to make sure that 2-3 days the money is ordered and it can be driven there. Branches as well, and we take our own money, take it to the branches to ensure that when the customers come, they can find their money there. On NPS, we settle with each other normally as banks do. What we've done here when we took over, Chairperson, there was issues of cash shortages, and it was understandable because the main contractor at the time, we understand the state that they were in. So we've since utilized their projections and also started building in buffers to ensure that we can at least not have instances where people go home because the money has been depleted. And in some instances, because of the challenges that we were having with certain channels, especially in November and December, then beneficiaries started moving to other channels like CPPs. So there we also experienced a few shortages because now the number of beneficiaries increased from the normal 25 for this CPP to 70, for example. Then we had to ensure that, but there was that agreement with the cash in transit to ensure that there's money that can be made available quickly and reschedules. So, Chairperson, that is in a nutshell. The team is working very hard to ensure that everything is in order based on our assessment and the touch points and the progress we've made since the January payment. We can see all of these efforts bearing fruit. Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, honorable members.
Thank you very much.
Chairperson, if I may, I can then continue with the COVID SRD question.
Okay.
Question.
Okay, you can continue.
Chairperson. So as mentioned previously, there's two organizations that deals with this grant. SASSA does all the applications and payments, and then we also have an independent appeals tribunal, which deals with matters relating to appeals. So myself, and I believe it's Mr. Mukwele that will do the presentation on behalf of the appeals tribunal. So just to give members an indication of the number of applications we got since the beginning of this year, members will recall we started this grant up again in April. We had a bit of a rough start. A lot of the criteria for the grant was changed. We had to build some new systems, and we only got up and running towards the end of June. But since then, we've managed to get about 13 million applications, and we've managed to approve about, or of those 13 million, we have just under 8 million, about 7.8 to 7. It fluctuates between 7.8 and 7.4 million approved applications every month. So in this last 9 months or so, we have managed to grow this grant to about just under 8 million clients. Just in terms of gender, slightly more females have applied for the grant at 56% and males at about 4%. This slide also gives a breakdown of the grant by province, and as expected, our largest province in terms of population and also in terms of poverty would be KZN, followed then by Gauteng, and then Limpopo, Eastern Cape, and so on. This grant, as members know, is also available to asylum seekers. In addition, our normal grant is only available to refugees and permanent residents and citizens. This one extends the grant as well to asylum seekers and those who hold valid permits. And we have about 15,000 asylum seekers that have managed to access this grant. In terms of age, the vast majority of applicants, about 60% of the applicants, are between the ages of 18 and 35, so in the youth group. And then in terms of education levels, the vast majority of the applicants do have some form of schooling. About 93% would have some form of schooling, and about 85% would have at least general education, which would be grade 10, and about 45% would have grade 12 or even higher education, tertiary education, about 5% or about 700,000 100,000 clients have some form of tertiary education. In terms of approvals and payments, so in April, we approved about 5 million clients for the grant. This grew to 6 million in May and 7.8 million in June, and then dropped again to about 6.5 in July. This then increased in August when the regulations were published, and so and the mean cess was increased to 624 rands. We saw then the number of clients jump to 7.4, and it's more or less been fluctuating between 7.4 and 7.8 in over the last couple of months. So in December we had 7.8, and then in January we had 7.4. And the reason for that is because we actually look at money that comes into people's bank accounts, and so we do see that in January more people seem to have had some kind of money coming into their bank accounts, which meant fewer people qualified in January. Now, in terms of payments, that is one area where we're still struggling a bit. So in the early payments, we'll see from April, we've managed to pay 95% of the clients that have been approved. Similarly with May and June, and then this declines to about 83% in January and December. And I'm going to go through a couple of reasons shortly in terms of why or what holds back payments. But just in terms of assessments, we are now fully up to date. As mentioned, we had a bit of a slow start. We only started assessing in June. We've managed to keep up and clear all the backlogs. We also had some challenges along the way with as you can imagine, when there was quite a number of changes to the requirements in this round of the grant, we literally had to build a system and implement the system at the same time, which didn't give us much time for testing. So we did have a few challenges along the way, which we had to sort of fix while we were moving. We believe we fixed most of those problems, if not all of those problems, although one wouldn't be too confident to say we won't pick up something as we go along. But we are now relatively stable. I think we were relatively stable from November, December, and every month we are now finalizing assessments and paying those assessments in that month. So January was paid in January, and February will be assessed and paid after we. So what we do, we normally first pay all our other social grants, and then we start with the SRT grants from about mid-month, and we assess them and pay them before the end of the month. And we should be on track and able to continue and keep that system constant as we move forward. So so in terms of some of the payment challenges we've experienced, so one group of people that we have particular difficulties with are what we call referred cases. These are people whose assessments and payments are put on hold because their ID number has been confirmed on the various fraud and risk databases to have been involved in fraudulent activity, either identity theft or so it's very difficult for us when the person applies, because we don't, this is a purely digital system. We have no interaction with the client. It is very difficult for us to determine if the person is applying with the ID number is the actual person applying for the grant, or if it's the person who has obtained that ID fraudulently that's trying to apply for the grant. So we have to confirm identity. We have about 83,000 clients who are in the status, and we've managed to deal with about 13,000 of these clients. And we have a digital system that we put in place for these clients, which we then biometrically identify them just to make sure that they are the actual owners of their identity that has been compromised. This process does, however, take a bit long, and clients do tend to struggle with it. But it is a process that we have to go through with them to confirm their identity before we pay the grant. Then we also have, and I missed the first slide, but I'm going to speak about it. In the section we have what we call general bank verification failures or bank accounts that are not, we can't pay into the bank account. So a couple of reasons why bank accounts would fail verification. Beneficiaries may have punched in the wrong number, just got a digit or two swapped around, or their ID and the bank account don't match, or the name, the name and the bank account don't match, and then the bank account, the verification of the bank account fails. There are some other reasons. The accounts may be closed, which means we can't deposit money into them, or the accounts may not have been featured, and which also makes them we can't transact with them. What happens in this is not that large, but what happens in these cases are that beneficiaries will have to then either go back on the system, correct any errors in the bank account details so that they can try to re-verify those accounts, if they, or they have to then open another bank account and upload those details onto the system. Another group, this is a slightly more difficult one that we deal with, is cash send payments. This is basically mobile money payments. Now, this is very new. I don't think anyone in government uses this at present. Most people only use these sort of mobile payments for personal transactions. And it's a lot easier when you use it for personal transactions. So, for example, if I send money to my nephew or my niece, I know the person that I'm sending money. I'm quite confident that the number I'm sending money to belongs to them. It's a lot more difficult in our space because we don't know the clients. We have to be able to verify that the number we're paying to belongs to the client that has qualified for the grant. And that is very difficult amongst our clients who mainly use prepaid SIM cards, which are often not recorded or properly recorded. In fact, it's just it's a very difficult space amongst the prepaid SIM cards. The contract ones are easier because when you take out a contract, everything is done properly. But on the prepaid space, we have a lot of challenges there. So a lot of the clients who select this option end up failing cell phone number verification. And then we send messages to them saying, well, you failed cell phone number verification. We can't pay you on that cell phone number. Please go and upload please upload your banking details. And we still have quite a large number of clients who haven't yet come back to us with banking details. We also have a little bit of a challenge that came in December when our contract with the verification of cell phone numbers lapsed, and we're in the process of just closing that loop. We should be up and running again soon so we can be able to verify cell phone numbers. But again, the vast majority of mobile number payments fail verification, and our message to clients, which we also put out on social media and various comms platforms, is that please, if you don't have a cell phone number that you use constantly for a very long time, and because when you start getting payments into your cell phone number, your cell phone literally becomes the same like your bank card. You've got to protect it as if you were protecting your bank card. And if you're not comfortable with that level of engagement, then it's best that you rather use a bank account than use a cell phone. We've also had one or two banks that have been helping us as well in terms of trying to biometrically identify cell phone numbers or link cell phone numbers to people through biometric processes. And that has brought a little bit of extra people that could use this payment channel. But again, this is a very new payment channel. We want to keep it within the payment space, but we are not strongly advocating clients to use it because it is a lot more risky than some of the other payment channels. Committee members may recall in May this year, the SASSA dropped us as a client or as a payment channel. So in previous iterations of this grant, we used to pay about 4,000 clients through SASSA at branches. And that was problematic as well because it created huge congestion at the SASSA branches. In this iteration, roughly May, they informed us that they'll no longer be able to provide this service to us. So we had to try and put in an arrangement with Postbank to help clients who don't have other bank accounts to open up Postbank bank accounts. And this has been a little bit more challenging again in the digital space. So clients would either go through the normal process of opening up a Postbank account, but we also want to create a digital process for opening up a Postbank account where we can do all the FICA registration and items digitally to prevent the need from clients having to go into the bank to open an account. And we are busy working on a solution for this that hopefully will come into play within the next month or two. And clients will then also be able to utilize Postbank as or new clients who don't necessarily have Postbank. Those who already have Postbank accounts, they just need to give us their account details, but new clients who want to use Postbank can then open up a Postbank account digitally as well. We've also had a few issues with fraud-related matters, particularly on cell phone and people, because a lot of people use other people's cell phones when applying for the grant, and they often sometimes then change cell phone numbers to try and access the grant. And so to curb this, we are also now implementing what we call an electronic KYC, or electronic Know Your Client process, which should kick in within the next month or two as well, so that every time someone has to or wants to change the cell phone number on the system, we then also biometrically verify who they are before we allow such changes to be made. Asylum seekers was also one of the areas that was particularly difficult to deal with. So dealing with the application process was pretty straightforward on SASSA side, but paying asylum seekers was difficult because I'm hesitant to say no bank wanted to open up bank accounts for them. They might challenge me and say they could have come to us, but we found that a lot of asylum seekers couldn't provide banking details. So we had to approach the Postbank again to say to them, can you assist these clients with bank accounts? And they then had to develop a whole new system that enabled them for us to open up bank accounts for asylum seekers so that we could pay them into their accounts. This was completed in December last year, and then we started making payments to the asylum seekers, and we should back pay them all by January. We also did quite a large amount of back pay, and by February, when we start to finalize these payments, so when we do the February pay run, we should finalize all the back pay as well on asylum seekers. Some other matters, and are not necessarily part of the questions asked by the committee, but sometimes we do have challenges getting databases on time, and this does then lead us into problematic space, especially with audit queries. So a large part of this grant does rely on SASSA being able to access databases from other government departments and then to make decisions on those databases. We've had some challenges with the UIF database about twice at least in the past 9 months or so. We had to work with databases that were 3 months old, which is beyond our level of comfort. And then when we do get the updated databases, we've got to rerun all those assessments. So essentially having to double the work just to make sure we didn't get something wrong. And that spirals into further problems, because if we did overpay somebody, we then have to raise them as a debtor and try and collect the money again from them. And obviously, if we did underpay someone, we have to make the back payments. So that often becomes a challenge when we struggle to get data from other government departments. And then, Chair, I'm going to hand over to Mr. Makwele to handle the SRD appeals. John?
Thank you.
What is
Thank
it that, excuse me, what is it that you are going to do?
I'm going to be presenting on the appeals, the SRD 350 appeals.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable members, and also to the colleagues. I'm just going to be speaking there is not much about few notes on the appeals so that we give understanding of what had happened since the implementation of the SRD 350 through the Social Assistance Act. What has happened is that the minister did appoint tribunal members who are civil society members to consider 350 appeals since they started. We started with the June, but I'm going to present them in a sequential manner so that we see. With the April one, we received 910,307 appeals. And what we did is that we adjudicated all of them for April. And out of that, a total of 177,770 were approved, which represent almost 90% of the appeals received in April. So the appeals are received from various instances in respect of SOCPEN, those that are still there, UIF, NASFAS, PERSOL, GPF, inmates, PERSAL, means test, and SARS. And the majority of appeals are in respect of means test. Let's move to the next slide, Brenton. For May, as well, what we did is that we adjudicated 1,296,235 appeals for May. And there were also numbers that were rejected and those that have been approved, which relate to the UIF. There are 3,075 that were approved for UIF, and there are 1,110 that were approved in respect of appeals relating to PERSAL. These are primarily people who were working in government, especially the Department of Education during the COVID period, who were assistants and teacher assistants, and now they're unemployed, and hence their grants have been approved. And we also approved 15,829 for with relating to means test, and then the rest were being rejected, which total 20,014 appeals being approved, which was a total of almost 1.54% of the 1,296,000 appeals received for May. Let's move to June. The June appeals, this is the month that we started with, because SASSA also started paying the SRD 350, the current iteration, within the June month. So as a result, we started with June, and we did only 516,199 appeals, simply because there were a number of challenges at that, which were then discovered that SASSA had to redo to consider them. And what has been the outcome thereof, it is that 6,141 were approved for UIF, 549 were approved for PERSAL, and all means were rejected. And then we also approved for SARS, 8,539, and 827 were declined. So in total, 15,229 appeals, which represented 2.9%. Like I said, that we started with June. So there's still about 1 million appeals that we now going to consider that relate to June, which we skipped as a result of the challenges that were there at the beginning when this process was started regarding adjudication of applications for SRD 350 in respect of June. But with the rest of the month, we are dealing with everything that has been received. The next slide, Brenton. So what we are currently doing is that the tribunal is currently busy with the July appeals, which they've started last week, because what we are doing is that we are dealing with these appeals upon receipt of records from SASSA, which are the database that they consider in considering the application. So we await that they give us, but what we do is that we await them give us updated information that relates to the specific month, which means that when we dealt with the June applications, we're looking at the June databases, which SASSA did not have at the time they were doing their adjudication. As a result, hence there's a delay of about 60 days that we wait for the updated information, and then we'll then adjudicate. So that's the process that we are busy with, and we have started with July now, which will be concluded in the next day or so for July. and then we then go back to deal with the June matters that we left behind at the beginning of our processes, to ensure that we then conclude June and make sure that all the people who made applications for June appeals have been considered and their outcomes are given. Secondly, that we are also planning to ensure that during the month of March, we deal with appeals for August, September, and October. That's the plan that we have put in place, and ensure that by the end of this financial year, we've at least ensured that we deal with all the applications for appeals up to the month of October, and then we'll then have a spillover in the next financial year of the other matters. So what we also make sure that all the outcomes, positive outcomes that are coming from the tribunal are communicated to SASSA, and SASSA has up to 30 days to ensure those outcomes are implemented. And already they've assured us that the outcome that we've given them for June, April, May, they've already implemented some. There are still some that they are implementing for May in particular, as May is the recent month that we have dealt with. But we are also going to be giving them for July, so that they can also consider that. That's in a nutshell what the appeals process is at this point in time, and indicating the fact that the majority of appeals that we are receiving are in relation to the means that people are having in their accounts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are you done?
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Chairperson. We're done.
Okay. Brenton, is there any addition?
No, Chairperson, this is the end of the presentation.
Okay. Thanks ever so much. But the reality of the matter is something is not going right. Let me give over to the honorable members to discuss the matter, and we can come up with way forward. Can I identify hands? I see Alex. I see Letitia. Who else? Okay, for now, let's give over to those two. Then others will follow.
And Chair, I can't raise my hand.
Okay. You will follow Honorable Jane Mangani after Aris.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to the SASSA and the Post Bank for the presentations. Chairperson, I just first would like to say that while I understand everybody's entitled to leave, you know, this is our very first Parliament committee meeting with the topic being SASSA. And I mean, this wasn't scheduled this week. It was scheduled, you know, in advance. And it just doesn't set, you know, for me, the tone for the year that we're taking SASSA seriously when our CEO is absent and there's an acting CEO. And it brings me to my next point, and it's something the minister touched on in her opening remarks, in that, you know, why does everything go through national departments when we have provincial departments and local departments? And the problem I find in my personal experience is that there are just so many acting people in these positions. We have acting REMs and we have acting branch managers. And this culture of acting that's within SASSA, it leaves very little accountability. And I believe that's one of the challenges we are facing in SASSA. And if I use an example, I mean, I met the acting manager at Bellville SASSA office in December. And when I sent the query through this year, I mean, just this week, I got a reply back to say that she's no longer the acting manager. There's now a new acting manager. And that, I believe, for me, is the reason why we do send everything through to national, because there's just no accountability at the local level. When the local managers are at the best point to actually resolve the queries quickly, instead of going through national. And I just want to use the opportunity to thank Mr. van der Vrede, who took over from Ms. Dunkley and who also did a sterling job in replying. And Mr. van der Vrede also, replies to many of my queries. And, that is the reason why we send everything to national. But anyway, Chairperson, onto the presentation. I would, for one, like to have a copy of the SLA, because as it was said, it doesn't include everything. And I do believe it should be the members' prerogative to determine what they feel is important and not important. But also I would like to know what is the RAN value of this 5% monthly fee, penalty fee that comes off. I also, would like to know when in the slide where it listed penalties for the various months, what were the values of the RAN values of those fees that SAPO incurred. I am assuming that an alternative power supply is in the form of a generator. And we obviously, I don't know if the Post Bank can answer because SAPO is not here. I mean, did they just not procure generators? Was there a contract? Is it just something they blatantly did not do? Chairperson, I'm also very concerned about this this expectation of the 1 hour waiting period where sandwiches and fresh water needs to be provided, concerning that was part of the initial SLA. And it's, that's one of the reasons under dignity that they faltered on. And I would just like to know more information about that, if that was applicable to all branches, if it actually happened at any branch, because I don't believe it has. I've already spoken to the value of the infringements. Then moving on to slide 10, and where we speak about the fee for the administration of the grant, and it's broken down, the service fee for everything. And I would like to confirm if this is a monthly service fee, and if so, what is the total monthly service fee SASSA is paying for grants? Because when I've done my calculation, and this I'm assuming excludes the SRD grant, it's about 165 million a month. So I'll just like clarity if, that calculation is accurate, or what is the actual number that we are paying monthly. Then, Chairperson, I'm not too sure if the minister is already left for cabinet, but I would like to have more information on what the ministerial decision was to move from SAPO to the Post Bank, what motivated it, what were the reasons, because that wasn't, really covered in the opening remarks. Chairperson, seeing that the contract with SAPO is still valid and still applicable until, I believe, April? Is SASSA still paying SAPO any fees in terms of this contract until that time? And then there's another concern I have, Chairperson. I think it's slide 15. And I'll quote, it says the general clauses have been reviewed and the outstanding part is the fee structure and the pricing for the service provision. So we are 2 months away from this new contract with the Post Bank, yet there is still no information on fee structures and pricing. And, I once again believe that this committee should, once this new service level agreement is signed, that we should actually have access to that. Otherwise, Chairperson, we are going to sit months down the line in this very same situation we're sitting in now, where we're only getting information about an SLA from 2 years ago. So that is just a concern. Slide 17 from the Post Bank, misinformation by competitors resulting in confusion. I would like to know who these competitors are, and if it's competitors in terms of other banks, or is it competitors in terms of another company, or another company, group of individuals who believe that they can render the service better than the Post Bank, because I believe that is information this committee should be privy to. We are constantly hearing SASSA is exploring new ways to improve the system, to improve the post bank, to make the system more seamless. And this is the first time I'm hearing that there are actually competitors out there who, in this regard. So just some clarity on who are these competitors. Then Chairperson, and I think the speaker from the Post Bank also alluded to this, we're looking at percentages, and these percentages, if you were thinking of it as a maths exam or a history exam or whatever subject exam, these percentages look good, but at the end of the day, these are human beings that aren't being paid. And if I just look at the month of April 2022, between the approved and the paid number, there's over 250,000 human beings who haven't been paid. And I think what I need clarity on is that the reasons that were given, the bank verifications, problematic ID numbers, etc., if that group is part of this difference between approved and paid. So in other words, that group of people who we are still waiting on bank verifications, etc., if they are part of this difference, or if this approved and paid is just people that must still be paid. So just some clarity on that. Slide 30, and then also Chairperson, just on that, and I know the Minister and Mr. Van Vrede explained that it is getting worse over time. Our poverty situation and economic situation in this country isn't also getting any better. And therefore, I do believe SASSA, needs to do more in actually getting their numbers back up. Chairperson, on slide 32, it speaks to cell phone changes and fraud. I'd just like to find out, how does SASSA differentiate between fraud and an honest person just changing their cell number? I mean, I know youth in particular sometimes have more than one SIM cards. They have a data SIM, they'll have a SIM they'll swap out for 3 minutes, etc. So how are we differentiating between cell phone changes for fraud and actual honest cell phone changes? Then the people that are being paid on per cell for the SRD grant, and I heard it was largely teacher assistants whose contracts have came to an end. So do these teacher assistants make up everybody on per cell accessing the grant, or who else would qualify to get the 350 grant who have per cell numbers? I'd also like clarity on what is the 068 error, because that is one of the questions that came through to me from numerous people who are getting this error message. So what exactly is that 068 error that people are getting? Then Chairperson, something that is not part of the presentation, but I believe that when this committee always speaks about SASSA, we should always include this as part of the presentation, and that is disability grants, Chairperson. Once again, we have clients, beneficiaries, who can't apply for the disability grant until the disability grant expires. Then it takes a month or two to actually get the appointment, another month or two to get the medical assessment, because as we know, we have a shortage of SASSA doctors. And then through all this time, Chairperson, these people can't buy food, they can't get their medication, they can't pay their rent. Yet I think it's a legislative or a regulation amendment that needs to be made to say, but if your disability grant is expiring, you can apply for it before it expires. So we're not leaving this vulnerable group of people without any means to survive, because we have a backlog system at SASSA when it comes to disability grants. So that is a massive crisis, Chairperson, which this committee has been repeatedly calling for improvements, and yet it still seems that it is happening. And I'm not too sure if the DG is still on the call, but I mean, we used to use GovChat to actually register and process some online applications. And I was recently on that portal, the GovChat portal, and I couldn't find the tab or the link to where people can actually register online and book appointments online. And I just want to know if this chat portal is still operational. I'm almost finished, Chairperson. Okay, I've touched on that. Then, Chairperson, you know, SAPO is not part of this meeting, but perhaps SASSA or the department can answer. We've now heard that SAPO is closing branches. I believe that all the branches in Mitchell's Plain have been closed. And I think it's important that this committee gets a full list of which SAPO offices are closing in the country and when are they closing and what is the plan in place for those office closures. I've spoken about the managers. And then lastly, Chairperson, well, second lastly, I've had numerous constituents come to me to express their sheer desperation in that they just simply cannot afford to get to SASSA offices. With fuel prices, with taxi fare, it is incredibly impossible to go back and forth to SASSA offices. I'm sure SASSA would have seen ENCA was at Bellville office yesterday and they spoke to people in the queue and people were there since last night, since 4 o'clock in the morning, and they still were not helped. And I mean, that interview was at 9 o'clock and they still were not helped. So pre-COVID, SASSA would come out to the community. Now, they aren't still doing that. They aren't coming out to communities because they haven't got their full staff complements. They don't have enough staff to actually get to all the communities that they need to get to get to. So my question is, when will SASSA be returning to pre-COVID operations? When will they be going out to the communities to ease the burden on the clients who simply just can't afford? And if I use another example, Chairperson, from the Northern Cape, some of those clients are traveling more than 600 kilometers for the nearest SASSA pay point at a travel cost of 400 Rand each time in parts of the Northern Cape province. And that is totally unacceptable. And lastly, Chairperson, when I did some oversight at SASSA offices, the load shedding is severely hampering not only clients in the processing of the grants, but the SASSA staff themselves. The SASSA staff themselves are incredibly inundated because the hours that they cannot capture means it's a delay, and they're constantly playing catch up. And in some of the offices, Chairperson, they don't even have natural light to continue working. So parts of the offices are completely in darkness because of load shedding. So what is SASSA's plan to get generators for their offices, because load shedding is not going anywhere? So Chairperson, I'll leave it at that. And yeah, thank you very much.
Good morning, Chairperson.
Thank you, Alex. I've given you more time looking at the challenges that are facing our constituents and areas. But we mustn't take longer time than and ask everything that we think that we have to ask.
Yeah, good morning, Chairperson. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you for SASSA and the department to come and do the presentation. However, we are just concerned, and it is quite concerning to us, that this portfolio only been informed now about the post bank that are distributing these grants. Why is it that they have not informed this portfolio committee earlier? Only now that there's problems, now they come and bring this presentation of this agreement that they have with the post bank. Secondly, I want to know if what current control procedures exist between the Department of Social Development, SASSA, and the post bank to guarantee the prompt payment of social grants. And I want to know, how was this decision communicated to the beneficiaries? Are beneficiaries aware of this? Because we have seen in December, since last year, many of our people that did even go without food because there was no money for them. Then also, I want to know, and Alex will touch on that, the impact that this closure of post office will have on the payment of social grants. And then there's also some other issue that I want to raise in terms of, we believe that there's a problem that SASSA was running out of these gold cards. Is it true? And we want to know, if it is true, what measures do they have in place to ensure that our people will receive their grant funds? Even when people get at retail stores, Chairperson, there's no money. Even if people get at retail stores, there's no money on these gold cards. They must please give us clarity on what is going on there. And then we have recently seen also in terms of the impact of the impact of retrenchments at SAPO. What will that be on the social grants? And then this one is not part of the presentation, but I want to know what is the total amount of money owed to municipalities, bills by SASSA officers, and how many officers are involved in this. And then, Chairperson, in terms of corruption, we have recently seen that 1.8 million, 10 SASSA officials again are back in court for fraud and corruption on SASSA grants, because there's doctors involved that now approve able people for disability grant. And we want to know, was this doctor bad, and why do we still have so many corrupt employees in SASSA? And then the other thing that I would like to know, are SASSA and the Minister of Social Development convinced that the post office can carry out the duties imposed on it by the conditions of the agreement, given the experience of grant recipients over the last 3 months, because it was chaotic the last 3 months. And then the last thing that I want to ask is, what is the influence of the SASSA's decision to assume the contract with SAPO, and why was the public never informed about that decision? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Aris. Honorable Mangani, it's you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I must also thank the presenters to give us this information that we are having today. I just have a little bit concern of the agreement of the SASSA, or Social Development and Post Bank. I wanted to know, because the structure, the infrastructure that they are in now of the SAPO, most of them are not in good condition. So I just wanted to know if they are going to be able to fulfill this memorandum of understanding between them and SASSA, or social development, of giving the people a dignified toilets, because in most SAPO offices, there were no toilets. I saw people in my rural area struggling, so that's why I'm asking that question. For Post Bank not to having more light, we communicated to our people when we saw them struggling, to say, go to other shops like ShopRite, Boxer, and whatever, you will get your payment there. It's up to Postbank to market themselves. By marketing themselves is to do the correct thing. Messaging, your message was late that you sent to the people because of the glitches or the cyber that was affecting your system. You communicated very, very late. So that one, it makes people to be scared to go to the Postbank. So up your socks and make sure that you communicate properly. What I'm complaining of here is the communication part of it that you are doing. So to the department, I just want to to ask this question. Are you certain that the Postbank won't disappoint you like SAPO disappointed the majority of South African by closing, not even telling that the Postbank, the post office are closing? So I just want to check if really we are still in the, we are having that memorandum strictly to say if they disappoint us, action should be taken, because it can be when I want to terminate whatever, I terminate it now without saying I'm having a challenge. So I think the Postbank have learned from SAPO. They should not repeat what SAPO was doing to our community. And then the other challenge or the other thing that I want to put forward, Chair, is this one of the missing middle. I understand that we are also giving the asylum seekers the grants. So I think we must think outside of the box to say, if in the country we know that we are having the missing middle, especially those who are in real poverty, why we don't make sure that they should get the grant? Because this 350 for those people who are having children who are schooling really is the disaster. 350, it won't even suffice for the transport of these kids, because their parents don't qualify for SASSA. I just think of single parents that are having 3 or 2, they can't even do anything for their kids. So I was just saying, let's think about it and think about something, because really I do agree that social development is doing much. Everything is on this committee. So we need to be briefed all the time, so that we must prepare ourselves that this thing might happen, this thing might happen. That's why I'm putting this one of the middle, the missing middle, that we must think about them also. The majority of the question they've asked about them. And then lastly, Chair, I know that even if the department is trying their level best, we're still running short of social workers. It's so difficult, because in my constituency, most social workers that are there, they come for experience only. After that, they go back to their provinces. So I was just checking, even the intake, I'm not saying those who are around won't go to other provinces, but we must have those contracts with the people who are staying around the area when we have those intake to say you are going to work for this community because you are around this community until such time, because we are struggling really to find 3 social work run around. So in this issue of us changing from SAPO to whatever, it is going to give them problem. As much as during January, it was so problematic. Others, they call day and night. That's why we went to an extent of calling the minister and the CEO of SASSA. So this thing, it gives us problem. So please, 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 let's think about it. Let's not wait for the disaster to happen. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you
I'm
very
done.
much, Honorable Mangani. Can we also give Honorable Bonit Marie, followed by Honorable Mshongo, and then Honorable Stock.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I am so sorry because here we are staying in Pelican Park, we had load shedding that we're in. But I've missed some of the discussion, but I just want to come in, and I also want to say it's very frustrating when everyone is mentioning your points like Alexandra has done. But I just want to emphasize on this thing, Chairperson. Last year we were fighting, why are you closing the post office? Because post offices are all in the rural areas, all the small townships, they are there. And now suddenly we hear that the post office is open again, and now they're going to serve the communities again. I'm just worried about the capability of the post office. Do they have all the requirements as was stated by the person there that did the introduction? Wheelchairs and water and toilets and all those things. So I'm just worried about that thing, but I'm very happy that the post office is going to assist these people again, because especially the small areas where the people are not having a ShopRite or a box or whatever the case may be. And then, Chairperson, from December, people were struggling to get their money. Some of them didn't receive any monies, like they were saying. What are they going to do about those people? And it is true what Letitia was saying is that the gold cards, people didn't get their monies on that ones as well. The 350, people have not received for 2 months their money. So it is just a concern that we are having. Chairperson, then the other thing I want to talk about, the same thing that Letitia was saying is that, Honorable Member Letitia was saying is that doctors that is working with people that doesn't have any sickness, but they're getting pensions. That is a huge concern, because the problem that we are having, SASSA is already having all these people that they have to look after. We cannot still have people that can work that is getting this unnecessary money. And then also the disability grant, while people are waiting for the things to be approved, isn't there a way that SASSA can then say, okay, we will give you at least food parcels if you wait 2-3 months for your things to go through? Because that time is that disabled people doesn't have anything. And the disabled are the most vulnerable people that we are having in our communities. And if they can just at least have something, because they cannot go before the date expire. And when the date expire, they wait for sometimes 2 to 3 months to get their things in order. And then the thing that was discussed in this meeting today, Chair, that is also a big concern, is this top-up when a parent passed away and the grandparents are looking after the children. When SASSA officers are telling old grannies, look here, that thing was not implemented yet. We are still waiting for head office to implement this. Then there's a gap, because people, there was no communication, because last year in November, I helped a grandmother with 2 grandchildren. This year when we went again, the people doesn't know because it's another office. So somewhere there's some communication that is not going through, Chairperson, because this top-up, Seriously, it's like you're talking a foreign language when you come to the department, and then they ask you, where do you get this? We have not received anything about this top-up. And then you tell the grandmother, but the lady, but look, I just assisted another grandmother last year, and the thing was approved, and the grandmother started getting the money in December. So how come your office doesn't know about it? So it seems like all the different offices don't get the same communication or something, but there's a problem because, like we're saying, we're having a problem with adoptions. Yeah? So this grandmother don't want adoption money because it's a grandchildren, but that 420, whatever the amount is not enough for her to send the children to school and to look after the children. So the top-up is at least going to assist her with another 3 grandchildren because the mother passed away last year. So then you go there and look like you are stupid, you don't know what you are saying. So can we also have some clarity on that top-up thing, Chairperson, because seriously, we need to sort this thing out once and for all. Thank you, Chairperson.
Chair?
Honorable Msongo, I said it's you who's going to follow, and
Yes, Chair.
followed by Honorable Stock. Thank
Yes,
you.
Chair.
Thank
Yes,
you.
Chairperson. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me welcome the report from the department. Chair, I've got 2 questions from my side. I am concerned about the number of fake social media pages of SASSA post office which claims to be assisting people, and looking at those pages, they have more followers than the actual SASSA page or post office page, and they respond to these people and they share information that is there. So I want to know from the department's side if they are aware of such things, because they engage with people, they submit things. If you look into social media, anyone can just go onto Facebook, for instance, and say SASSA, it comes out there, all these pages, and it has more than thousands and thousands of followers. I think SASSA should look into that, because I think it creates more problems for SASSA, because these people now claim that they get assistance there and they get scammed. So I want SASSA to look into that matter. I think it also causes the problems and misinformation, and people then do not follow the right processes of applying for grants or following up, because they rely on these social media pages and they believe these pages at least they answer them through your inbox and whatnot. And then secondly, Chair, there are floods in Komas, in Mpumalanga and eThekwani. Currently, no car coming in and no car going out. So I want to know if SASSA has systems in place or measures in place for beneficiaries to receive grants when the payment date comes. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Can I proceed?
Yes, over to you. Proceed, Honorable Stock. Thank
Okay,
you.
no.
Thank you, Honorable Stock.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Let me also take the opportunity to welcome the presentation, join my colleagues in welcoming the comprehensive presentation by both the department, SASSA, as well as the Post Bank. Honorable Chairperson, I just want to start my submission by indicating that the President, in his State of the Nation address, highlighted that the provision of support through the social welfare remains a priority for this administration, and also that it is an important part of leading with the scourge of poverty in South Africa. So therefore, our portfolio committee, it's presented by a report and its entities that requires us as members of the portfolio committee to strengthen our efforts towards undertaking oversight, and also in particular with the function of the department and its entities. I would, however, like to bring the few issues for consideration in the portfolio committee by the department and its entities. With regard to SAPO, SASSA, SLA, this section of the presentation highlights the challenges that have been affecting the delivery of social grants through the SAPO, SASSA, SLA. It further highlights the circumstances leading to the ceding of the agreement of Post Bank and the process therein. I think this is a challenge that I think many of my colleagues, the honorable members in the portfolio committee, highlighted in their submission, with much more emphasis highlighted by Honorable Manganye around the issues of the late payment of SASSA, and then which actually affects our ordinary people on the ground, the beneficiaries of the grants, in the rural areas in particular, where someone have to travel a few kilometers to get to SASSA, only to be told the grant will not be paid, and then that beneficiary is supposed to have been sent to be sent back to where he or she comes from. So this is a problem, and I think it's actually affecting all of us in our constituencies. So it will be good if maybe SASSA can just, with the Post Bank, give us a highlight in terms of what is the approach moving forward. How can we improve on this area of our responsibility? Because if we are not going to be able to improve, it means this thing is going to be recurring. Like for an example, if I need to cite an example, somebody who ends a beneficiary who's actually getting SRD 350 grant. From the 350 that this person will be getting from SASSA, and then you are still going to travel maybe twice before you even get the 350. And then how much will be left for you to be able to at least maybe make one or two interventions as in terms of the livelihoods and all of that. So this is a problem. Maybe what the department needs to look at in SASSA, they also need to look at improving their communication on their side. Like for an example, if you foresee that there's going to be a problem, then we communicate already in advance, a SAP or a SASSA. We communicate to the beneficiaries or no, we foresee there's a technical problem here, or we might be experiencing some technical glitches, so we're not going to be able to pay our grants in time. So maybe it's an issue for consideration. And then in terms of slide 15 on MSA, the new MSA is also expected to be concluded before 31st of March in order to take effect from the 1st of April 2023. So I would like to find out as well, Honorable Chairperson, that what are the updates on the finalization of this, considering that all the deadline of 31st March is nearing. I mean, we're left a few weeks before 31st of March. So if we can also get an update with regard to that. And in terms of slide 16 on the system failures, what certainty is there that the improved systems will not hamper on service delivery in the future? And then slide 30 on cash sent clients, are there any time frames for this process of concluding procurement processes to reactivate the cash sent payment channel, considering that we are actually approaching the end of the financial year? Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. That's my submission. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Stock. Is there anyone?
Yes, it's me, Chair. It's Manganye, Chair.
Second round.
No, I forgot one point only. It's not second. Chair, I wanted the department to clarify, because I had some of my colleagues, maybe I didn't hear it clearly. So I was watching the news yesterday when they say a former worker for SASSA is the one that is conniving with the doctor of issuing the card. So I wanted the department to clarify it so that we mustn't mix issue. We must understand who is conniving with what. Is that doctor also being every time and again assisting the department of, or is just a doctor at the community that is assisting those scam or scam? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mangani. I think honorable members have covered me in most questions, but the reality of the matter is that I'm still not convinced on how the presentation was done. In fact, I'm not convinced about the points that have been put, because even in our area, that is Eastern Cape, we're encountering the same challenges that are being encountered by other honorable members. It frustrates us. It's worse with me. People ask in fact, they think that I must know something in line with SASSA, social development, and other issues. But when they discover that I don't even know myself, they get disappointed, and I'm also embarrassed on that. This thing of banks and other things, you know, people, when they go to post offices, they are being told that there are no cards. They have to go to town and get some cards. Members have covered that. And this pillar to post to pillar for the people, I don't think it augurs as well. Because the reality of the matter, Mina, I thought it's something else. Maybe Post Bank is not dealing with us again. Maybe they have the contract has been expired, so they are being referred to banks, other banks. Can we imagine? Mina, I never related this thing of Post Bank with cards, but when we request people to send people or send agent to issue cards or bank cards, or I don't know. Can we get clarification on these issues, man? Maybe I'll be also covered when you explain further that, because there's a slide that I wanted you to say, can you repeat this, what you were saying? But I didn't want also to disturb you. Thank you ever so much. Can you convince further than what you have done with the presentation?
Right. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I think we let us. I will ask a couple of my colleagues to assist with some of the responses, but let's go through the question sort of individually from each of the members. We'll start with the first honourable member, Honourable Abrams. I think maybe we could start with the acting CEO, maybe just saying something around the absence of the current CEO as well as the staffing levels in SASSA. CEO.
Thank you, Brenton. I just want to indicate that the CEO would have loved to be here, but unfortunately, it's something that was urgent that she had to attend to, and she really humbly requested that we attend, and we prepared with her, we briefed her, and we shared with her what we were going to present. She couldn't be here, and in terms of the acting arrangements, we tried to stabilize the organization. What we have done is that we are busy with the BPR process, and with the BPR process, we decided that let's hold in terms of formal appointments until we have completed the BPR process. And once we have completed, then the organizational structure will be approved, and then we'll appoint people permanently in the positions where the budget is available. Thank you, Brenton.
Thanks, CEO. I think we also just challenged to some extent, as Honourable Abrams mentioned, that as part of the sort of general cut on government budgets, and as you know, SASSA is also impacted by the government wage bill, so we are also required to reduce staffing levels significantly to comply with those budgetary requirements, and hence have to look at alternative ways to deliver our services at a sort of lower wage bill. Then there was a question on having a copy of the agreement. I think this is possible. I don't foresee that being a problem to be able to share that agreement with honourable members, so that everyone knows what the service standards are that we expect to deliver on. And then again, as we finalize any new agreement with Postbank, I believe we can make that agreement public as well, because it's part of our developed principles for the public to be aware of what they should expect in terms of service standards. In terms of the RAND agreements of the SAPO contract, we spend about 1.4 billion rands a year, so that comes out to about, on average, it depends how many clients they pay, so it fluctuates. it would come out on anything from about around about 100 million rands per month, sometimes up to about maybe 110 million rands a month if more beneficiaries. It also depends how beneficiaries is. So if more go to the payment system, it could actually be less, about 90, and then if more people go to cash pay points, because cash pay points are more expensive in that month, it could be a little bit higher. But on average, it would come out to about 100 million rands a month. So 5% penalty fee would be about 5 million rands on that. I think the issue about generators. So yes, there are some areas where there are generators. There are other areas where there are no generators or alternative power supplies. I think everyone is having a major challenge with power supply at the moment. Hence the president's declaration of a national disaster earlier or last week sometime during the State of the Nation. But that is something we continuously, I think another member asked a question around backup power supplies as well. So I think both SAPO and the Post Bank as well is struggling with that, and SASSA offices, many SASSA offices, we're struggling with that as well. And not just generators. Generators were not meant to be alternative sources of energy. They're meant to be very short-term solutions. So when you have load shedding, when you have stage 6 load shedding, when you have back-to-back load shedding, generators themselves become very problematic. Plus there's the whole maintenance and so it just becomes an extremely costly form of power generation when you're having extremely long periods of power outages. But it doesn't only impact SASSA, it also impacts our service providers. So for example, some of the big data companies in the country themselves, if you look at some of our service level agreements with them, some of them, we have a service level agreement says they need to supply data or internet to us at a level of 98%. But for example, one of our service providers fell to 85% when we hit stage 6 load shedding in December. So this is, just keeping the lights on, keeping the connectivity of our systems going is a massive problem that we're having in our country at the moment. When I believe it's not just SASSA, but the whole country is impacted by this. And this does then have that spillover and spiral effects where if you are down for a couple of hours, you just then accumulate huge backlogs. If we start reverting to manual processes, it basically means double work with limited staff, and that just has a huge negative impact. And I believe the only real solution there is to come up with alternative sources of energy, but that's not something that is immediate, and hence we are trying to plug the gaps with generators and other batteries and so forth, and in the short term. In terms of, I think I've sort of answered that one. The admin fee is roughly, it fluctuates around 100 million rands a month. Around the issue of shifting to Post Bank and whether or not we're still paying SAPO. So the contract was ceded to the Post Bank in October. So our last invoice to SAPO was September. We are not paying SAPO anything further than that. Post Bank obviously has the subcontracting to SAPO, for example, branches and so forth. So Post Bank would probably, depending on what services SAPO delivers to Post Bank, would then pay Post Bank, would pay SAPO. But SASSA doesn't pay SAPO directly anymore. I think the reason, or one of the reasons why we shifted to Post Bank, I think 2 members asked this question, is largely if we actually evaluated, well, first of all, we had problems with SAPO. They were not able to deliver on the service level agreement, as I showed that just in the current financial year, almost every month, actually every month we were penalizing them. And it's pretty much been like that since the beginning. SAPO, we also know, is in a bit of a difficult situation, and we just felt it would be a bit risky that if, if one entity was to find themselves in this difficult situation and not be able to rescue themselves.
I'm sorry to disturb you. Can you repeat yourself on what you were saying about Postbank and subcontracting of?
Thanks, Jess. So, Chair, I think the question was that, are we paying SAPO? And the short answer would be no, we don't pay SAPO anymore. Initially, we were contracted with SAPO up to the end of September, where we would pay SAPO, and SAPO was then subcontracting others. So Postbank would have then been one of their subcontractors, and then Fidelity and all the other companies they use to deliver grants with subcontract. That then changed around 1 October, where Postbank becomes the primary contract holder with us. We now only pay Postbank from 1 October, but Postbank would still, for Postbank to deliver these services, they would still subcontract, and I believe SAPO is one of the subcontractors because they rely on the branch services of SAPO in some areas. But they would have other contracts like with Fidelity for cash pay points and so forth. In terms of the fee structure and pricing for the new contract, I think it is something, once we conclude that contract, that we can also make that available to the committee. I think a few members raised concern around 1 April, a looming date of 1 April. But I think the most important thing to note, and hopefully alleviate some of that concern, is that the agreement was ceded to Postbank from SAPO as is. So even if we don't meet the 1 April deadline, that's just, maybe we shouldn't have set a deadline for ourselves that coincides with the financial year, because then it seems like things are linked. But it isn't necessarily linked. If it's not 1 April, if it's 1 September, if it's 1 October, all it means is the existing MSA remains in place. So that's just an option we've put into the seeding agreement to say, well, maybe the reasons why SAPO was not necessarily delivering so well was because some of these things are not feasible. So we can be opening up the table to see what to renegotiate that. But if we don't reach agreements, or if we can't, if we don't change anything, then the existing agreement that was seeded remains in place. It's not as if we don't reach the 1 April deadline, grant payments won't happen, because the agreement was seeded as is, and the as is agreement will then continue. And that's sort of that agreement. Many people call it an evergreen agreement. In other words, it doesn't come to an end. And Postbank obviously took over that commitment from SAPO. I'm going to ask the Nayo from the Postbank to talk about the competitors that he's mentioned, and who these competitors are. I would imagine that every single other bank in the country would be a competitor of the Postbank. And maybe just to refer members again to the slide I presented around where our clients bank, with 46% of our clients bank with Postbank, but 54% bank with other banks. And obviously, over the last couple of two years or from 2085 years or so, the SAPO has lost a lot of clients to these other banks. So they have a substantially larger number of clients 5 years ago when we started this contract with them, and a large amount of those clients has moved on to other banks. As that slide that I presented on the banking information showed, 98% of our clients use the national payment system. Hence, meaning they could use any single bank in the country. They're not necessarily bound to use the Postbank. And I suppose that also answers the chair's question around banks. And one of the other members also mentioned to Postbank that, you know, if they don't solve the glitches and the problems that they're having, they're going to continue to lose a lot more clients. And so maybe I'll answer the question as well in terms of, is SASSA confident that Postbank can do this? And I think from a SASSA perspective, our goal is not to be bound by any particular one contractor, but to diversify the system and ensure that if there's failure in any part of the system, clients have options. And hence, one of the key things we have with, which we've done with the SASSA contract and continue with the Postbank contract, is to ensure that the card is 100% bank compliant. Now, that is partly cause of the problems, because when SASSA implemented this card, they didn't quite make it a perfect banking card, and the Postbank can talk more about the banking compliance. So Postbank is now trying to plug some of those holes and make sure this card is secure and safe within the banking environment, and that's causing some of the problems that we've seen over the last couple of months. But our goal as SASSA is to say that everybody should have options, that if there's a challenge, because all banks have problems. My bank regularly sends me messages that their systems are down, etc. Banks get hacked, etc., and then they shut down systems and so forth. But the idea is that when this happens, beneficiaries shouldn't be stranded. They should easily be able to access or activate another channel. If same thing like with what we do, if you go to an ATM and the ATM isn't working, you just go to the next ATM, maybe of another bank down the road, and so forth. And so that's ultimately where we would want to go in the future. It's not to say our clients are dependent on one particular organization, but that they have multiple access channels, that all these channels are interoperable with each other, that if you've got, it doesn't matter which bank card you have, you can access your money securely from any of the payment channels out there. And then as one of the honorable members says, it's not so much whether, so I don't want to comment on whether SASSA is confident on whether Postbank can deliver these services, but I think it's to a large extent our clients who have we need to make sure that our clients have those options to say if they're not confident that Postbank can meet their needs, they are fully, they have the capability to swap into any other one of the many banking options that are available out there in the country. And it's obviously up to Postbank to ensure that they retain the client base and keep their customers happy. Otherwise, they would lose a substantial amount of business. In terms of how do we identify between fraud and honest people trying to change their cell phone numbers, and similarly with people that have had this also spills over to people who have their ID numbers compromised and so forth. So that this is a more difficult one. So at the moment, what we do is that if you want to change your cell phone number, you will get a one-time PIN to your previous cell phone number. So the assumption is that if the previous cell phone number was your cell phone number, you should hopefully still have access to that. But then clients sometimes change their numbers after they lose access to their previous number. But then they would have to call our call center, and we do a manual process to try and make sure we got the right person that is changing their number. But as I've also mentioned, we're now introducing this new electronic Know Your Client system, which biometrically identifies the client, so then they can do it themselves digitally when they to change the number by verifying through both facial recognition and so forth through our digital system, both biometric system to verify they are who they're saying they are, and then allow them to change their number afterwards. That system should hopefully be up and running. It's a new system. We're just in the final stages of testing, and hopefully should be up and running in the next month or two. But until then, we've still got the old system of OTPs and so forth. In terms of the cell, nobody on the cell should qualify for the SRT grant. And I think the question was who would qualify and who would not qualify. There are per cell for other grants like the child support grant, old age grant, there could be some could qualify depending on what their income is. But because the income threshold of the of this SRT grant is so low, nobody on PERCEL would qualify for this grant. I assume the 068 error is a banking error, so I'm going to refer that one to Postbank as well to come in. The challenge around disability grants and not being able to apply for them before it expires, and this is temporary disability grants. I'm going to let DSD respond to that question from a legislative perspective, but I think the biggest challenge there is because it's a temporary grant, it would not possibly, because it's awarded for a period, it's a temporary disability, when the doctor awards the grant for the disability, and remember, this is not necessarily for the purposes of alleviating poverty, but alleviating or providing some income in respect of loss of employment because you've got a temporary disability. And hence the assessment can necessarily only happen because the doctor would have said, well, I think you're going to have this disability for 6 months or 3 months, 2 months, depending on the period. And then you get reassessed after the end of that period. If you got reassessed before the end of the period, it may have complications in the sense that you might not have completed. So the initial assessment would have been that you would expect this temporary disability to have cleared within a certain period of time. In a sense, at the end of that time, that you need to be reassessed to determine if you still have the disability or not. Another member did mention SRD, which is possible if when clients apply for a grant, we can provide SRD on a short-term basis. I think the legislation does allow for a 3 months provision of SRD when applying for a grant. On terms of a full list of SAPA offices that are closing, I'm going to refer that one to Postbank as well. The GovChat portal is still up and running. I can confirm it is up and running on the cell phone app. I just need to confirm if there's challenges with the web portal. There may be a challenge with the web portal, but we'll check with GovChat if that is the case. But I've seen it on my app at the moment, and that it is still running on the app. In terms of our community engagements, again, we are looking at, we have reactivated this, not to the same extent that we were running it during the pre-COVID times. Again, noting that our staff complement has been reduced significantly, but we are looking, and some regions have already began to implement the community outreach programs, and we're hoping to have this rolled out in all communities or all regions. As I won't necessarily say at the same scale we did it at pre-COVID, because we just don't have the same level of resources that we had pre-COVID. But we hope, to the best of our ability, we want to try and make sure we can service communities as best as possible. And this should hopefully, sorry, I just lost my question. This should hopefully also, specifically as Honorable Marie mentioned, in the Northern Cape, where there's long travel distances, so that this should hopefully also bring some relief in those areas as well. I think I've touched on load shedding as well. Okay, then there was a series of questions for the Postbank around similar questions around closure of post office, Postbank running out of gold cards. So CEO of Postbank, I'm going to leave that to you. The no money on the gold cards, I think Neo did explain it, but I think you can explain it again, CEO, around what happens when when an ATM transaction fails, because the money is on the go cards. So SASSA transfers all the money into your bank account. So every client has technically been paid over the last couple of months. The money is sitting in their bank account, it's safe, it's secure, it's there. What often happens then is when the transaction fails, the money gets, in a sense, deducted from the account, but then gets reversed. Normally, it's supposed to happen in a matter of seconds, but due to some glitches in that, it didn't happen, and then it takes maybe a day or two before the money gets reversed back into the account again. But the money technically is safe within the bank account, and the client can then access it once the unsuccessful attempt of withdrawal is reversed. But the Post Bank will explain that in a lot more detail. Chairperson, in terms of money owed to municipalities, I can't give you an answer on that one today, but maybe we can prepare a response on that particular question, unless the CFO of SASSA can have a number on that. I think I recall a similar type of question, and so we may have prepared a parliamentary question on that if maybe the CFO can come in afterwards. In issues of fraud and corruption, I think the only thing I can say is that SASSA has a zero tolerance for fraud and corruption. It is unfortunate when our employees do get involved in these activities, and we definitely cooperate with all law enforcement agencies to clamp down on these activities and deal with employees that do get involved in these activities, and to send a strong message to our employees as well, is that we will not be tolerant with anyone that gets involved in fraud and corruption. But unfortunately, there are employees that often go down this route. Okay, then in terms of around SAPO infrastructure and the condition of SAPO infrastructure, I'm going to leave that to the CEO of Post Bank. In terms of how they're going to deal with that, I believe there are some plans in place there. And then I think most of the questions from Honorable Mangani was around Post Bank, the cyber attacks, getting some level of assurance from them that these things are dealt with, and that they will. We're not going to expect these problems going forward, and that we won't be disappointed. So, CEO, I'm going to leave that one to you. There was a question about the missing middle. I think to some extent this COVID SRD grant is trying to plug the gap of the missing middle, in that it's a grant provided for those between 18 and 60, so just after the child support grant ends and before the old age grant kicks in. I think we do necessarily note that the 350 is not a lot of money. However, I think both the department and SASSA is bound by the budgetary constraints and the available funding that's made available to us to provide the grant. But ideally, this amount, we should probably stop calling it 350 grant, because it might just get stuck on 350. This grant in real terms should now probably have been, if we increase it by inflation, should have been over 400 by now. But again, that is a huge challenge there, is the budgetary constraints. And I suppose that it is, as we're dealing with budgets at the moment, or going to be dealing with budgets, it might be something, right, that Parliament wants to consider going forward. Then the questions from Honourable Murray around closing of post offices. I think it was some of the questions that was asked that the CEO of Post Bank will deal with. Honourable Maria, I think if there's anybody on the 350 that hasn't received money for 2 months, if there's any way you could maybe get those ID numbers to us. So as mentioned, is that our system is as current as it possibly can be as present. And sorry, I think I missed a question by Honourable Abrams. around whether or not the numbers that we haven't paid are for those reasons that I mentioned in the slide. So yes, all those reasons mentioned in the slide are the reasons why we haven't paid people. And I think one of the questions that I maybe skipped or missed when I was presenting was the question of when will we make 100% payments, which is it's something we can't put a date on that. There's for us to be able to pay someone, a lot depends on the person we're paying to either correct their banking details, to undergo the identification checks that we need them to do if their identity has been compromised, if their cell phone number can't be verified, to give us an alternative form of payment, if their bank accounts were not figured, to go and get their bank accounts figured, or to give us another bank account that they may have that is figured. And there's many banks that operate digitally as well, where you can without necessarily going into a branch, you can open an account and have it figured. So there are options, but so just so those people that we've gone paid, in other words, the 5% or the 200,000 odd people that the honourable member mentioned, are people we need. It's ongoing interaction we need to have with them to say, we need you to do something on your side, to get your bank details or to get some kind of payment method up and running to us so that we can actually physically then make payments. We have paid pretty much everybody who we have payment details for, who we can say, we can verify your account, we can verify your cell phone number, hence we've paid you. So there's no one we've not paid who we can pay. It's the people we haven't paid are people who we just can't make a confident payment to them because there's something wrong on their accounts or their payment method. Except obviously for the asylum seekers, which we've now sorted out. Yeah, okay. The top up, Honorable Murray, I would appreciate if you could tell us which local office was giving you the runaround. So we have communicated, obviously from your experience, we've not done a too good job about it, but we have tried to, we've made sure at least every local office in the country knows about this. But we're all human beings, so I suppose there are some ways where glitches or challenges happen. But if you let us know which local office has given you the runaround, we will make sure we sort that out as quickly as possible. All SASSA offices should know about the top-up grant and should take applications and not give people hassles. And we'll definitely deal with anybody that has been doing or not been doing this appropriately. If further details can be provided to us about where these challenges have appeared. In terms of fake media pages, I'm going to ask our head of communications to just talk about that. And then I'm also going to ask this, I'm going to put the one on the floods or the disaster ready response from the Postbank side, which I'm sure they have built into their contract with Fidelity in terms of how to deal with areas that are impacted by disasters and payment days. Honourable Stock's question around the cell phone payment channel. That channel is the procurement issue is being dealt with there. We should have it sorted out in the next month, so that and it doesn't necessarily compromise the payments within the channel. It just compromises some of the assessments. So everybody whose cell phone payment has already been assessed and approved, they will continue to get their money paid via that channel. And as mentioned, we're also working with some of the banks who are willing to work with us to also help us with verification of cell phone numbers, and that has already increased that channel. That has already increased the success rate of that channel a lot more. But once again, so this is not a channel. This is a very new thing in South Africa. So this is not something we want to rush into too fast. and it is a bit of a risky channel, so we do still encourage clients to use bank accounts at the moment until this whole channel matures as a more stable form of payment. The comments from Honorable Stark as well as noted about the 350 being limited. And I suppose also that's one of the reasons why this grant is digitally accessible, so that you don't necessarily have to go into a SASSA office. Everything can be done within your environment, where you're from any cell phone or any device that has access to the internet. If you select your own bank accounts and so forth, or any access channel that you have, an ATM or a merchant close to you, you should be able to access this grant relatively easily without too much, with hopefully not spending too much money. But again, we do acknowledge that the value of this grant is limited, and that is something government needs to think about in terms of what is the best value for the grant. I think government's main concern was how many people were accessing the grant. There was a belief that the grant could be going to 16 million or so people, but at the current levels, it seems to be stabilizing at about 8 million people, which is which is similar to the unemployed number of people in the country, but obviously not the same group of people. And I think maybe there will be decisions going forward once there is more comfort that there is sort of a limitation in terms of who accesses the grant. And then they can probably start looking at, well, maybe the next round is looking at how just want to increase the value of the grant without necessarily putting the fiscus at too much risk. The comments around the communication is noted. I think that is one area we've not been doing very well with, especially as the payment channels, when there were problems in the payment channels, we could have done a much better job at communicating with our clients, but also with all stakeholders, as well as members of parliament who are in communities and can assist with getting messages out. And I'll also ask the CEO of Postbank to make a commitment to improve communications, because it starts with them. The challenges they pick up sometimes they would know about it much earlier than SASSA would know about it, and we need to have that sort of commitment to ensure that the moment these things are picked up, we start sending out and communicating with our clients and stakeholders. Chairperson, I hope I answered your question around the banks and the cards. The Postbank cards is like any other bank card. It is fully operable within the national payment system, so clients can, in a sense, interact just like we would interact. We get our salaries into our bank accounts. Clients get their grants into their bank accounts. We would hope, and our vision is to move to a future where clients don't withdraw the money from bank accounts, that they just, that they would just swipe the card and just use their card for payments and keep the money in their bank accounts. Not always feasible, because there's still a lot of transactions that can only be performed with cash. But even so, clients can, withdraw small amounts of cash, 100 rands or 200 rands, and keep the rest of the money in their card and then use the card to swipe. And maybe the CEO of Postbank will also speak about some of their plans to enable SASSA shops and other merchants to try and bring more people into the cashless environment and relieve the need to withdraw cash. Okay, Chairperson, I'm going to pause there, maybe just to ask our CEO if he's got any numbers on the municipalities, but if not, then we will provide a written response. And then also I'm going to ask our head of communications to come in around the communication issue, around fake websites and so forth. And then Postbank CEO can come in and handle the Postbank related questions. CFO?
Okay, are you done, Brenton? Brenton.
Chairperson, there's just 3 more people that needs to respond to questions. I'm not sure. Maybe Paseka can come in on the comms. He's on the platform.
Okay, over to him.
Okay, it looks like they are quiet. Chairperson, maybe then the last person can be the Postbank CEO, and I will try and see what's happening with our communications head. Lucas.
Thanks, Brenton. Thanks, Chairperson. Just maybe the first one is around the misinformation by the competitors. What we've seen, I think, for the last year, where in most instances we'll have some of the banks going either to SASSA offices or some of the areas more. We've seen that also in the most one that was prevalent was in Limpopo, where they will then go and tell the beneficiaries that the SASSA cards are being discontinued and they need to move to their banks. I think in the main, the banks that we've been seeing on the ground through their agents, I think Capitec has been one of the biggest, FNB. And I think there was one where we had to send a legal letter, one of the, I forgot the name, but it's this payment channels where they had issued the comms indicating that, people need to move to them. So we had to send them a legal letter. I forgot the name, I'll recall and then revert back. So we had to also...
Excuse me, that is exactly what we experience in our provinces. As a result, that's why we had a thought that it might be that Postbank has been expired, their contract, and then they have to move to other banks. And in post banks, they are being told that go to town and open up banks. That's exactly what is taking place. So I'm happy that you are explaining, but it's late for now because they have been, that has been already happened.
Yes, Chairperson, we've seen that. And actually at the point we've issued a comms jointly with SASSA to address that issue. But from our side, we are continuing to drive the message on the ground, and actually I've been pushing my comms team to actually reassert and communicate a lot more aggressively. So it's a process that we are currently undertaking. And I think when we started with the session of the contract, I think we've seen a very sustained drive by either other competitors, but also with the incidences that we are experiencing, they seem to have been sustained in a way that we could not necessarily explain. So that, all those disruptions, I think, had made our people to be a little bit uncomfortable and also, a bit scared. And I had to also do quite a number of interviews to just make sure that, we allay some of those fears. So that has been done. And then in terms of processes that, to make sure that we guarantee the payments, I think what we've done is that, we do have a diversified channel. And also in the December period, when we had challenges with the ATMs, we redirected a lot of our traffic to the retailers and other alternative channels like CPPs, as well as the post offices. And we made sure that we made more cash available in those other alternative, most of the cash pay points, as well as the post offices, because there we can be able to direct more cash to them. So we're able, to do that. And the other element that we are doing now is, we're making sure that we are strengthening all our systems. And as Neo has alluded in the presentation, we have migrated our grant payment system into a more secure environment, more reliable environment. And we've seen now in February, we operated much more seamlessly as compared to, previous months where, we didn't have a lot of issues that we had experienced in the past. But over and above that, what we are doing is that at the branch level, we are trying to put a system that where branches can access directly without having to come through the post office environment, because that has been challenged with some of the legacy IT environment, as well as lack of investment in the past due to the current financial challenges that the post bank is faced with. In terms of the closure of the post offices, there we are engaging with the SAPO colleagues around how do we manage that process better, because in a lot of instances, we mostly would become aware of a closed post office when it's either the payment time or when maybe we're trying to reach out to that post office. So we're trying to get them to provide better plans to understand, what are their plans. But also we've got instances where due to the financial challenges that they have, where they've got landlords that they owe money and they would close the post office, whereby the office or the staff doesn't have mechanisms to access the post office, so they'll be locked out in a way. So we are currently engaging with SASSA to see how we can improve the whole communication, but as well as how do we ensure that we limit the disruptions as much as possible. And in instances where we've had that, we've redirected the customers to alternative channels, to an extent that in some instances we've provided transport to those customers to go to alternative channels to be serviced. And then in terms of the gold cards running out, we do have gold card stock. So we're working with our team to make sure that all the post offices have got enough stock to make sure that they can replace any lost card and any expiring card with the same SASSA gold card. And that process is ongoing. And we will be engaging more so with SASSA as well as we start evolving in terms of the next cycle of card replacements. So that process is ongoing. So the SASSA gold cards, we still have stock. So Marita is also working with the branches to make sure that the branches that don't have stock, we are able to restock them timelessly and make sure that they are continuing to service our customers in a way that reduces the disruptions. And I think the operational challenges at SAPO, is one of our biggest challenges due to their current state. And all the time, it's one of our biggest risks that we continuously managing, but also we're trying to diversify, the payment channel to make sure that we can limit the disruptions as much as possible. With regards to the retrenchments at SAPO, this one I've also engaged with the SAPO CEO just to understand, their plans around this. What he has indicated is that it will be done in a much more scientific way, in a way that will limit the disruptions and also taking into account the operational requirements on the ground. And we are due for further engagements with our ExCos to just make sure that we are aligned and we fully understand, what has been, what are their plans into the future, and also if there are any areas that we need to intervene in, that we can timelessly intervene. There are current discussions around us looking at taking over some of the branches. So that discussions is still happening, but it's more where we have a lot of SAPO, so it's post-bank transactions. So we are currently working with them to identify some of those areas and see how we can best take over some of those branches and run them, and also have SASSA, also have SAPO as part of the branch. So that work is continuing, and as we get closer to that, we're hoping that it will help to stabilize some of the challenges that we have, especially in some of the busy branches with more post-bank transactions. In terms of the infrastructure at SAPO, yes, it's a concern. I think we all know the financial challenges that SAPO has been going through. And unfortunately, as the post-bank, we've been sitting on their infrastructure, and to a lot of extent, we had the moratorium, ministerial moratorium, which had barred us from doing any procurement. Only last year, late last year, it was moved, and when we were able to start with the IT modernization. So we are now finalizing our IT modernization, where we will move out of the SAPO environment into a more independent environment that will allow us to make sure that we have stable infrastructure, but also we comply with the Reserve Bank requirements as we start applying for a full banking license, because it's one of the requirements from the Reserve Bank that we decouple from the post office IT infrastructure and have our own standalone infrastructure with the necessary disaster recovery and mitigations, and doesn't expose us to any third-party operational risks like when we're sitting on the post office, like the experience that we've had So those are some of the things that we are currently finalizing. And actually, we've received all the equipment, and we are finalizing the setup. In the next few months, we should be able to fully migrate out of the current SAPO environment. In terms of the issues with the payment challenges, especially where we've had failure of the reversals, and I think to a lot of extent some of the malicious activity that we had experienced had a negative impact on some of those reversals. And to the main, we've reversed the majority of those transactions, and we are picking any failures as and when we pick them up. We basically look into them and reverse. And we've been also working closely with the SASSA colleagues. As and when they pick any challenges, they send through to us, and we resolve timeously to make sure that our customers can access their payments timeously. And also what we're doing as well in terms of the diversification, which Brenton has also briefly spoken to, we look at onboarding SASSA shops. So that process is at an advanced stage. So we've got two SASSA shops groups that we are busy working with. And some of the requirements that we had to clear was to make sure that we've got legally registered South Africans that can be part of that SASSA shop initiative, so that we avoid any unnecessary risk, and we make sure that we're fully compliant with the FIC requirements, from the purposes of making sure that the financial system is not compromised in any way. So that will help to make sure that customers, beneficiaries can access payments at the local level. But we trying to drive customers or beneficiaries to move more and more towards using their cards for purchases, because it reduces the cost for us and SASSA, and actually reduces the risk to beneficiaries of being robbed or handling a lot of cash. So those are some of the enablements that we are now starting to drive a lot more aggressively with them. Areas without the post office, I think in most instances, in those areas, our channel, because we are part of the national payment channel, we are able to use all the retailers, as we've alluded to, and all the banks' ATMs. Our customers can access those. And in areas where there is no other alternative, that's where we have what we call the CPP cash pay points, where we've got mobile cash pay points going to those areas. So there, we cover those customers with the mobile cash pay points. But if it's an area where maybe a post office has closed down, we have looked at the alternative mechanisms where in some instances, we ferry the customers to the closest location to make sure that they can get a service. With regards to areas where they are experiencing disaster, more so the floods, if we could not access the areas, normally we would work with the SASSA as well as the community in that area to reschedule the payments and make it on a day where either we can have better accessibility, especially where we find certain areas in the Eastern Cape, Mpumalanga and Limpopo, we do find that the roads are not accessible. So then we had to kind of reschedule the payment dates, and we work closely with the SASSA colleagues to make sure that we can continue to service our customers. So that those are some of the interventions that we are making in collaboration with our SASSA colleagues. In terms of system failures, we have onboarded a cybersecurity team that has been helping us to strengthen our IT security environment. And also, as we've alluded earlier, we've moved the social grants into a much more better infrastructure environment, which we've also been relooking at all the security around it, strengthening that, and also making sure that the access points, we can manage and control who accesses our systems, and actually we can block any threat timelessly. And I have to allude that that's been one of the most painful and stressful challenges that I had to deal with in my working career, and I don't wish it on anyone. And to that extent, we've sat with our SASSA colleagues and shared some of the experiences, because generally what you find is that if you have this type of incident, the partners that you work with, they tend to also be attacked over time. So we've been sharing experiences and the things that we can both do differently, to protect each other, but also to share some of the best practice that we're working on. So I think that's I think the last one. I'm just trying to make sure that I haven't skipped anything. And I think in terms of the capability of the post office, the current post office environment, yes, it's a challenge, Chairperson. The post office financial challenges have been well documented, and we continue to monitor this and engage our SAPO colleagues, and also see how we best support them where we can in making sure that we can keep the continuity, including with the data center where we had to support them and make sure that we keep things running. So those are some of the things that we have been doing as the Post Bank to make sure that we can continue to drive the availability of services as much as possible. And also, with the alternative channels that we are now using, I think it's helping to make sure that we can, or the SASSA colleagues at branches can access the systems directly without having to go through, the support channels, to make sure that we avoid any disruptions that is out of our control. So we'll continue to explore all those things to make sure that we improve our service availability. And finally, Chairperson, I think someone asked, maybe just my surname is Lucas Ndala, and Ndala is my surname. And I saw one of the colleagues asking on the messages there. Thanks, Chairperson. I think I will pause here.
Thank you very much. Let's give over to Ndala. What's gonna say, Ndala?
Chairperson, I think there was just two questions that still needs to be answered. If the SASSA CFO can maybe respond to the one on municipalities, and then if our head of communications can respond to the one on how we deal with the fake news channels. CFO?
Yes, thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I can confirm that within SASSA, we have done two things in terms of the payment of service providers. One is to really have a tracking of all invoices that comes in. I can confirm that we are actually complying with the 30 days payment turnaround time. So at the end of the third quarter, we paid 1,904 service providers, and all of those invoices were paid within 30 days. So we're sitting at a current payment cycle. If there is a municipality that will not have been paid, either will not have received the bill, or there's been a dispute, and that will have been able to write back to the municipality to resolve it. And if ever then there is a dispute, we have already established an escalation protocol within the regions that we can get that matter resolved without any delay. So if there will be any municipality or honorable member knows of any municipality that currently is not being paid, or there's an issue, I think we can take it and be able to resolve it. But in terms of the payment of service providers, we have committed it in the APP. We have elevated that part to be part of the APP, and we're monitoring very closely from our office. And therefore, I can confirm to all honorable members that we are adhering to the 30 days payment for valid invoices. And if there is any invalid invoice, we return it, or we engage with the respective service provider just to assist municipalities and all other SMEs on the issues of the cash flow. We do not delay on the payment of service providers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. Can I check with the honorable members? Are they satisfied, or are they? Alex, I see your hand, and who else? So as to close this thing.
Chairperson, before I go, I think the information officer from SASSA just would like to comment on the misinformation campaigns on Facebook, and then I'll go afterwards, if that's okay with you.
Are you saying Facebook? Alex, can you repeat yourself? What's your question?
Chairperson, I'm saying there's just still one more response from the SASSA Information Communication Officer with regard to Honorable Slongo's question on misinformation, and then I'll go afterwards.
You have put it better than telling us about Facebook here. You've put it better, Honorable Member. Okay, let's give over to them.
Okay, no, thanks, Chairperson. Basically, we are aware that there are people who basically spread some misinformation, especially on social media. Some of the information which they've been posting on the social media, it basically to misinform people and harvest their information. We have within our department people whom we call the social media ambassadors, whose aim is to make sure that they basically attend to those particular information, which I think a majority of us have seen. The last one, Chairperson, we can confirm that it was posted, I think, 2 weeks ago, wherein people were requested that they must submit their information because SASSA is basically dispersing a 700 rand. We did a video clip to make sure that we respond to that particular matter. Thanks, Honorable Member Slongo, for raising that particular issue. We have meetings every Monday just to check the trends, especially for the previous week, because we are aware that SASSA is not only the department which is being targeted, or most of the department, if you can check the Department of Health and other departments are targeted by people who spread information, whose intention is to make sure that they harvest the information of unsuspecting beneficiaries so that they can then be able to defraud them. We will definitely make sure that we compile that particular report because we need at the end of the year as an organization or as a unit communication to make sure that we are aware that how many of this social media misinformation was posted. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Alex, is your hand still up?
Yes, Chairperson. Chairperson, after getting the presentation, listening to the responses, I'm leaving this committee not very reassured that the move to Postbank is going to improve the grant payment system. And now, in the absence of the minister, the ADG, and the CEO who's not with us, we have the acting CEO for SASSA and the acting CEO for the Postbank. And I would just like to know if those two individuals can give this committee and the viewers at home the reassurance that this move to the Postbank will actually improve the payment of the grants. Thank you, Chairperson.
Yeah, thank you very much. Alex, remember this Postbank movement to them. It's 2018 thing. It's not now's thing. But what is critical out of what you have said, I think the information should be cascaded down as much as we can. And even ourselves as members of the parliament, they need to be informed about this so that in our constituency offices and our constituency areas, we are able to explain all what has been done. But I hear what you say because really information is power. It really put us in a plight, working and serving in the portfolio of social development and not sure of what is it exactly that is taking place. I'm sure the department has taken note of that, and even SASSA has taken note of that, and they are aware that we are not happy now on how they cascade the information to communities. It's sometimes late, it's sometimes not there. Thank you ever so much. I think I must say that loud and clear that communication in the cool communication breakdown to ourselves and with the department and SASSA. Is DG, acting DG, present?
Yes.
Kovale man funding. Yes,
Inkosi Chairperson, thank you very much. And I've been back in the meeting, Chairperson, and really listened to the responses and some of the questions by honorable members. I just want to say we've taken note of the concerns, particularly around the communication aspect. And I think it's imperative, Chairperson, that we improve on our end. And I think what we will do is to develop some sort of a plan that we will share with members by way of how we anticipate we should improve on our communication. And I think both ways. One, in terms of members of the public and communities, as you've highlighted, Chair, but also in terms of our important stakeholders like yourselves as the Portfolio Committee. So we've taken real note of that, including the concerns that are faced by members in their constituencies. And I think if there's any other questions that members may want certain clarity on, we would be happy to take written questions and respond to those accordingly. And I think maybe just lastly, Chairperson, we would welcome an opportunity by the Portfolio Committee to consider perhaps joint Portfolio Committee meetings together with the Communications Portfolio Committee and the agency, so that we have a more holistic picture around some of the challenges and particularly how we are addressing those challenges. So I want to appreciate this committee and the questions posed and the matters raised here. We do take them seriously. And I want to pledge that we would be able to come back and share with you some sort of a communications plan that outlines how we will improve communicating to the public and also our stakeholders, being yourselves. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Acting DG, but you mustn't wait until we call you. If there is an important announcement and message that you would like to pass, you can talk to Lindiwe, and Lindiwe will put it as an announcement that is very urgent, so as to be in par with the information. Thank you ever so much.
Noted.
I think,
thank you.
Yeah. I don't see any hand for now. We'll keep on asking questions that we have not managed to ask. If there is something that hinges us or we have a challenge on it as in our communities. Thanks ever so much for your time, for your presence. And I think let's adjourn the meeting now. Hope that we are not closing the issue of discussing and debating about these issues. But what we are not going to do is to change what we have agreed on previous meetings. But what we need to know is the information upfront as members. Thanks ever so much. The meeting has been adjourned. We can recuse them. They are being recused. Let's just go straight to the program. I could see that it's not a long thing, but let's give over to Lindy to take us through on that.
Thank you very much, Chair. The program is as follows. Can you see, Chair?
Not yet. Yeah, but it's better now. Thank
Yes,
you.
Chair. Today is the 15th of February. We just have a meeting with SASSA and DSD around the issue of the status or a report on the payment of social grant. Next week, we're going to have a meeting with DSD, SAPS, and the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development to make a presentation on the violence and murder of children mandates, programs and intervention stats, and impact of intervention and programs. I've already forwarded the communication to these three departments, but unfortunately, the Department of Police staffs, they have another engagement on this date. They won't be available next week. I haven't heard from the Justice Department. Chair, on the 1st of March, we will have a presentation from DSD and the Basic Education and the Department of Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities on services and programs for people living with disabilities, including children. I think this has been raised by the committee in a number of meetings. So we have scheduled for the 1st of March. And then the 8th of March, Chair, the committee will receive a briefing from DSD on its action plan on the employment of social workers and the sector strategy on the employment of social workers. And then we proceed to the 15th of March. There will be a briefing by DSD on their third term quarterly report on the financial and non-financial performance for 2022-2023 financial year, which is October to December 2022. Chair, the 22nd of March, there will be a briefing from DSD on the policy on linking of social grant beneficiaries to government services. Chair, the week of the 28th to the 31st of March is set aside on the parliamentary program for oversight visits. Chair, remember we postponed the workshop due to other commitments and the number of some committees members that were not present due to prior commitments. So this date is from Monday to Friday. So the proposal is that the first 2 days we go to Gauteng. The first 2 days we do the workshop where all the department, the DSD, NTA, and SASSA, and the South African Council of Social Workers, social professions will also be there in that workshop. And then we have engagement with them from Monday to Tuesday. And we had an oversight to Gauteng that was postponed some time ago. And then from Wednesday and Thursday and Chair, we just have an oversight in Gauteng. So we utilize that week for the workshop as well as the oversight, Chair. So Chair, I don't know whether you want us to touch on the international study tour or we can just defer that item.
Which one are you talking about, Lindy? The one that you are saying we must defer it?
The international study tour, Chair.
Let's defer. Look, it hasn't been approved until it has been approved.
Okay, Chair.
Okay. There is the program, honorable members, for the first term. Is there anything that we are leaving it behind?
Chairperson, it's Alex speaking.
Yeah.
Chairperson, for next week, the committee secretary indicated that SASSA and DOJ is not available for that date. And I believe it's imperative that SASSA and DOJ is part of that meeting. I mean, we all wake up every day to news that children are brutally murdered in this country and that child predators are running amok in this country. And I would like to, through you, Chair, please ask that we find a date where SASSA and DOJ is available for that very important subject. Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay, I think Lindy is listening to what our request is, portfolio committee, and then she needs to arrange with that and check which exactly date that they are giving us. Maybe we can sacrifice, even if it's not a committee day, but let's check.
Okay.
Whether how can we put the
Okay, it's only the subs thus far. It's only the subs that confirmed the non-availability so far. But if you want 3 of them under one roof, I can try to make an alternative date.
No, I think we can continue with others and check for this one only. When can they be available? Sure.
Chair, you said we can continue with Chair?
I'm saying we continue with the meeting, except this one, and then check for a day or a date for this one.
For subs?
Yes.
Okay.
Because
Chair.
we need them.
Okay, Chair.
Sure. Members, can we say we adopt the draft?
Sorry, speaking. Just coming.
Yoli? Yoli, you are breaking. We can't hear you, Yoli.
Okay, Chair, now I'll communicate by WhatsApp.
Okay, sure. Let's adjourn the meeting, honorable members. The bus has arrived. Thank you ever so much.